When Shaquille O'Neal, four-time NBA champion, Hall of Famer, the most dominant basketball player who ever lived, stepped out of a black SUV in front of a small middle school in San Antonio, Texas, on a Tuesday morning in October 2023, he left his publicist in Los Angeles. He left the camera crew outside. He left the entourage at the hotel. No Instagram, no TNT cameras, no announcement of any kind. Just Shaq, 7 feet 1 inch of him, in a plain gray hoodie and jeans, walking through the front doors of Cole Middle School like a man who had been waiting a very long time to do exactly this. The kids were in first period. The teachers had no idea he was coming. The front office secretary nearly dropped her coffee when she looked up and saw 3 black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. But here is the thing that nobody understood yet. The thing that makes this story completely different from every other celebrity visit you have ever seen. Shaq was not there for the school. He was not there for the kids. He was not there for a photo or a check or a headline. He was there for one man, an old man, a man who never played a single minute of professional basketball, a man who never had a contract or a championship ring or a television show or a shoe deal, a man with a mop, a 90-year-old janitor who worked the hallways of this school decades ago, a man so quiet and so overlooked that most people who walked past him every single day could not have told you his name. And somewhere in this building, on this Tuesday morning, that man was sitting in a hallway with a cup of coffee, having absolutely no idea that the most famous basketball player on earth had just walked through the front doors to find him. What Shaq did when he found him left everyone in that building completely speechless. It left the school secretary crying before she even knew why. It left 2 6th graders frozen against a wall, holding library books, witnessing something they will remember for the rest of their lives. And when the story finally got out, when the world found out what Shaq pulled out of that envelope and placed into the old man's shaking hands, it spread to every corner of the country, because what was inside that envelope was not just a gift, it was the proof of something most people never get to see. The proof of what one person, sitting down on a cold hallway floor with a lonely kid who had nothing, can set in motion without ever knowing they did it. 37 years of proof. But there is a secret buried inside this story that nobody knew until that Tuesday morning. Not the kids, not the teachers, not even Shaq himself, until his assistant made a phone call that changed everything he thought he knew about that afternoon in 1985. A secret about the old man with the mop. A secret about what he did before he ever sat down. And when Shaq finally heard it, sitting on the floor of that hallway, a 51-year-old man with 4 championship rings and a Hall of Fame plaque, and an empire built from nothing, he went completely still. Because what the old man did was not an accident. It was never an accident. Watch this video all the way through, because the ending of this story will change the way you see every single person who has ever shown up for you quietly, without asking for anything in return. The ending will make you want to find them, call them, go back, before it is too late. This is the story of Shaquille O'Neal, an old janitor named Ernie, and the most important hallway in the history of basketball. And it starts in September 1985, with a 13-year-old boy sitting alone on a cold floor, trying very hard not to cry. It is a Tuesday morning in October 2023, and Cole Middle School smells exactly the way it always has. Floor wax, cafeteria pizza, the faint, honest ghost of 1,000 sweaty gym classes. The kids are in first period. The hallways are quiet. Morning light comes through the tall windows in long yellow stripes, landing on the same scuffed linoleum floors that have been scuffed by the same kinds of sneakers for decades. Nothing about this morning feels different from any other morning. And then Ms. Patricia Elwood, the front office secretary, looks up from her desk. She is a wiry woman with reading glasses she keeps on a beaded chain around her neck, and a coffee mug that says, "World's Okayest Employee," a gift from her nephew. She has worked this front desk for 14 years. She has seen everything. She has not seen this. Through the glass front doors, a black SUV the size of a small yacht rolls into the parking lot. Then another. Then a third. They park with the quiet, unhurried confidence of vehicles that are not used to being questioned. Ms. Elwood sets down her mug. The doors open. A man unfolds himself from the middle vehicle. There is no other word for it. Unfolds. Because that is what it looks like when someone who is 7 feet and 1 inch tall gets out of a car. He straightens up slowly, fully, until he is simply standing there in the October sunshine, enormous and unhurried, wearing a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a pair of sunglasses that probably cost more than Ms. Elwood's car payment. He looks at the school for a long moment. Then he walks toward the front doors. Ms. Elwood knows exactly who he is. Every person in America knows exactly who he is. But she doesn't reach for the phone to call anyone. She doesn't run to tell the teachers. She doesn't take out her cell phone for a picture. She just watches him come through the door, and she feels, without fully understanding why, that whatever this is, it is not the kind of thing you interrupt. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal has come home. He is not here for a photo opportunity. His publicist is back in Los Angeles. The camera crew he was offered is waiting outside in one of those SUVs and will stay there. The entourage is at the hotel downtown. Because this visit is not for Instagram. It is not for TNT or the Inside the NBA cameras, or the DJ Diesel brand, or the Papa John's contract, or any of the 1,000 things that normally follow this man wherever he goes. This visit is for one person, an old man. A man with calloused hands and a lifetime of quiet work behind him. A man who never asked for a single thing in return for what he once did on a Thursday afternoon in a school hallway. A small thing, the kind of thing that gets forgotten by the person who does it and remembered forever by the person who needed it. A man who, as this story will slowly, carefully, and painfully reveal, may never get to hear what Shaq has carried all this way to say. That is the cliffhanger hiding inside this morning. We don't know it yet, but it is already ticking. We travel back now. The year is 1985, San Antonio, Texas. And the boy standing in the doorway of Cole Middle School is 13 years old and already 6 feet 6 inches tall, and he has never felt smaller in his life. His name is Shaquille O'Neal. He does not yet go by Shaq, the way the world will one day say it, casually, warmly, like the name of someone everyone knows personally. Right now he is just a kid, a new kid. Again. His father, Philip Harrison, is a United States Army sergeant stationed at Fort Sam Houston on the northeast edge of San Antonio. Philip Harrison is a big man himself, broad-shouldered, serious-eyed, disciplined down to the marrow, and he loves his son with the particular fierceness of a military father, which means he shows it mostly through standards, through expectations, through the belief that the world will not hand his boy anything, and that the kindest thing a father can do is make sure his son knows that early. Shaquille's mother, Lucille O'Neal, is something else entirely. She is warmth itself. She is the soft place in a family that moves too often and settles too rarely. The one who makes a new apartment feel like home within a week. The one who always knows which box the good blankets are in. If Philip Harrison is the spine of this family, Lucille is the heartbeat. Together, they have raised Shaquille through Newark, New Jersey, through Germany, through Georgia, and now through Texas. Each time the army moves, the family moves. Each time the family moves, Shaquille walks into another school where everyone already knows each other and nobody knows him. Cole Middle School is simply the latest in a long line of first days. The teachers look up at him and do not know where to start. Some are patient about it, some are not. He is placed in classes where the other kids are studying things he already covered 2 schools ago, and in other classes where they are far ahead of where he left off. He raises his hand for neither. He sits in the back when he can. He slouches, which does not help much when you are 6 feet 6 inches tall and 13 years old. But he does it anyway, because the alternative is taking up the full space of himself, and that feels like too much to ask of any room. The kids stare. They always stare. Some of them want to talk to him because he is fascinating in the way that genuinely unusual things are fascinating. Some of them keep their distance because he is different in the way that genuinely unusual things can make ordinary people nervous. He understands both reactions. He has had years to understand both reactions. What he does not understand, cannot yet understand, because he is 13 and has not lived enough life to name it, is loneliness. He only knows that lunchtime is long, that the cafeteria is loud in a way that makes him feel more alone, not less. That he folds himself onto chairs built for bodies half his size, and eats without tasting much of anything, and watches other kids laugh with their friends, and wonders what that feels like when you stay in one place long enough to have any. He is failing 2 classes. Not because he isn't smart. He is very smart, sharp and curious, and funny when he feels safe enough to be funny. He is failing because the schoolwork keeps shifting with every move, and because somewhere between Georgia and Texas, something slipped and nobody noticed. And because he is embarrassed to ask for help in front of people who do not yet know him well enough to see past the size of him to the boy inside it. He does not yet know what he will become. He does not know about the rings, 4 of them, or the backboards he will shatter, or the arenas that will shake with 60,000 people saying his name. He does not know about the movies, or the music, or the business empire, or the Hall of Fame plaque with his face on it. He only knows that this is another new school, and it is September, and he is alone. This is the Shaq the world never got to see, before any of it, before he became the story everyone knows. This is just the boy. And on a Thursday afternoon in late September, sitting in the east hallway with his backpack between his knees and his untied shoes on the floor, and the very specific misery of having missed his bus again. Everything is about to change. Not because of a coach, not because of a scout, not because of a trophy or a tryout or any of the things people assume must have started the story of a champion. Because of a janitor, because of Ernie, not because of a coach, not because of a scout, not because of a trophy or a tryout or any of the things people assume must have started the story of a champion. Because of a janitor. Because of Ernie. Ernest Boone is 52 years old in the fall of 1985, and he has worked at Cole Middle School for 11 years. He arrives every morning at 6:30, before the teachers, before the office staff, before the first bus pulls into the parking lot and releases its cargo of loud, half-awake children into the world. He arrives in a 1979 Ford pickup truck, the color of dried mustard, that makes a sound like a mechanical cough whenever he turns the ignition, and he has driven it for 6 years without complaint because it gets him where he needs to go, and he is not the kind of man who asks more from a thing than what it can give. He brings his lunch in a green metal lunchbox. His late wife Dora painted small yellow flowers along the sides of it years ago, sitting at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon while the radio played and the windows were open. She painted them carefully, each petal separate, each stem a slightly different shade of green. Ernie has carried that lunchbox every single workday since she gave it to him. He will carry it every workday for the rest of his working life. He is not a counselor. He is not a teacher's aide. He holds no degree, no certification, no official title, beyond what it says on his employment paperwork, custodial staff. He mops floors. He replaces burned-out light bulbs in bathroom stalls, where kids have scratched their names into the paint. He fixes the third stall latch in the boys' restroom near the gym that breaks every few months with the reliable regularity of a season changing. He cleans up spilled chocolate milk and knocked over lunch trays and the occasional broken glass from a classroom science experiment gone wrong. And he does all of it without making anyone feel ashamed of the mess they left behind. Most of the kids at Cole Middle School do not notice Ernest Boone. He is part of the building to them. The way the water fountains are part of the building and the exit signs are part of the building. Necessary, present, invisible. He moves through the school's hallways with the quiet efficiency of someone who has learned that the best way to do important work is to do it without making anyone feel watched. He hums while he works. Old songs mostly. Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. Sometimes a hymn his mother used to sing on Sunday mornings in Beaumont, Texas. The words worn smooth from so many years of remembering. He notices things, though. That is the truth about Ernest Boone, that the kids never suspect, because they are not paying attention to him, and so they assume he is not paying attention to them. But he sees everything. He sees which kids eat lunch alone 3 days running. He sees which ones come in on Monday mornings with the careful, contained stillness of children who have had hard weekends. He sees which ones linger in hallways after the bell rings because going to class means sitting next to someone who has been cruel to them, and the hallway, for a few seconds more, is safe. He has seen all of this for 11 years. He has never been trained to see it. He simply cannot help it, because his wife Dora taught 3rd grade for going on 20 years by 1985, and 30 years of dinner table conversation about children, about what they need and what they carry, and what a single adult paying attention can do for a kid who believes nobody is, has made Ernest Boone permanently, irreversibly alert to the particular weight that struggling children carry in their bodies. He spots Shaquille O'Neal on the boy's very first day at Cole Middle School. He cannot miss him, obviously. Nobody can miss him. But Ernie is not looking at the size of the boy. He is looking at the way the boy holds himself. The deliberate slouch. The eyes that sweep a room quickly and then drop to the floor. The careful way he chooses a seat at the far end of the lunch table where the fewest people will have to acknowledge him or choose not to. Ernie has seen that posture before. He has seen it many times. It is the posture of a child who has learned to apologize for taking up space. He tells Dora about the boy that evening over dinner. "There's a new kid," he says. "Biggest child I have ever seen in my life. And the most lost." Dora puts down her fork. She looks at her husband the way she always looks at him when he brings home a child's story. Fully, without hurry. "Well," she says, "go find him." So for the next 2 weeks, quietly and without any announcement, Ernest Boone pays attention. He makes sure the east hallway, the long lower corridor near the back of the school that catches afternoon light and stays quieter than the rest, is always clean by 3 o'clock. He has a feeling about that hallway, an instinct about where a boy like this one might end up when the day gets too heavy. He is not wrong. On a Thursday afternoon in late September, at almost exactly 3:15, Ernie comes around the corner of the east hallway with his mop bucket, humming the opening bars of "Mercy, Mercy Me," and there is Shaquille O'Neal. The boy is sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, and his backpack pulled between his knees like a shield. His shoes, enormous, both of them untied, are flat on the linoleum in front of him. He has missed the bus. His eyes are dry, but only just. The way eyes look when someone has decided, firmly and with great effort, that they are absolutely not going to cry. He is 13 years old and 6 feet 6 inches of pure, quiet misery. Ernie stops walking. He looks at the boy for a moment. Then he does something that will cost him nothing and change everything. He sets down his mop. He lowers himself to the floor, slowly, carefully, with the particular caution of a man who has a bad left knee and has learned to negotiate with it rather than fight it. And he sits down next to Shaquille O'Neal on the cold linoleum floor of the east hallway. Not across from him, not crouching down to his level in the way adults do when they want to seem approachable but are really just waiting to stand back up. He sits down, fully, the way you sit when you are planning to stay. The boy stares at him. Ernie does not introduce himself. He does not ask if Shaquille is okay, because it is obvious the boy is not okay, and asking that question would only make him have to say fine, and mean the opposite. Instead, Ernie says, "You look like a man carrying something heavy. You want to set it down for a minute?" Shaquille says nothing, but he does not get up. And that, Ernest Boone knows from experience, is the whole thing. That is the entire opening. What follows is 40 minutes. 40 minutes on a cold hallway floor, while the school empties out around them, and the afternoon light moves slowly across the linoleum, and the mop bucket sits forgotten 3 feet away. Ernie does not ask about grades. He does not ask about the missed bus or whether Shaquille needs him to call someone. He does not ask about basketball, even though there is no possible way to look at this boy and not think about basketball. He asks Shaquille what he likes. The boy is quiet for a long moment. Then he says he likes music. He likes action movies. He likes his mother's cooking, specifically her red beans and rice, which she makes on Sundays. He likes making people laugh, though he doesn't always know how to start. Ernie listens to all of this the way Dora always listened, fully, without filling the silence with his own voice the second it appeared. Then he asks the question, "What do you want to be? When the world figures out what to do with you, what do you want to be?" And Shaquille O'Neal, 13 years old, sitting on a hallway floor in a school he has attended for 3 weeks, looks at this quiet man with the bad knee and the flower-painted lunchbox and says it out loud, maybe for the first time, with a certainty that surprises even himself. "I want to be the greatest basketball player who ever lived." He waits for the smile that means, "Sure you do, kid." He has seen that smile before. It does not come. Ernest Boone looks at the boy for a long, serious moment. Then he nods once, slowly, with the gravity of a man receiving information, rather than humoring a dream. Then every single day, he says, "You have to be willing to do what great men do." And most of that happens when nobody's watching. He gets up from the floor, picks up his mop, gets back to work. Shaquille O'Neal sits in the east hallway for a few minutes longer, alone again, but differently alone than he was before. Something has shifted, something small and structural, the way a single beam can change the whole weight of a building. He does not know the man's last name. He will not think to ask before his family moves again. But he will hear those words every day for the rest of his life, when nobody's watching. He does not know the man's last name. He will not think to ask before his family moves again. But he will hear those words every day for the rest of his life. When nobody's watching, time moves. That is the one thing time does without being asked. It is winter of 1986, and the Harrison family is packing boxes again. Sergeant Philip Harrison has received his next assignment, and so the dried mustard truck in the Cole Middle School parking lot will go unnoticed one Tuesday morning, and the enormous boy with the untied shoes will simply not be there anymore, the way new kids sometimes simply stop being there. And most people will not think to wonder where he went. Ernie Boone will notice. But we will come back to that. The family lands in Germany. Baumholder, a small military community tucked into the hills of the Rhineland, where the winters are gray and long, and the American kids on base exist in a particular bubble. Surrounded by a foreign country they rarely fully enter, bound together by the shared strangeness of belonging nowhere specific. For most military kids, this is simply life. For Shaquille, it is another hallway, another cafeteria, another set of faces that do not yet know him. But something is different now. He carries the words, when nobody's watching. He is not entirely sure what to do with them yet, but they are there, lodged somewhere beneath his ribs. And on the mornings when the alarm goes off before dawn, and he does not want to get up and go to the gym on base, he hears them, and he gets up anyway. He grows. This is perhaps the most understated fact of Shaquille O'Neal's adolescence. He simply does not stop growing. By the time he is 15, he is approaching 6 feet 10 inches. His hands are large enough to palm a basketball the way other boys palm a tennis ball. His feet require shoes that have to be special ordered. He is, physically, becoming something that the sport of basketball has not yet seen, and does not yet have a vocabulary for. But size without skill is just a tall person. Shaquille knows this. Philip Harrison has made sure he knows this. Every morning on the base in Germany, before school, before breakfast, before anything else in the day has happened, Shaquille O'Neal is in the gym. He is working on footwork. He is working on his hands. He is doing the things that nobody requires of him, the things that earn no immediate reward, the things that happen in an empty gym at 6 in the morning, when the only witness is the squeak of his sneakers on the hardwood floor, when nobody's watching. It is in this gym, on one of these early mornings in 1987, that a Louisiana State University basketball coach named Dale Brown walks in. This is a true story, and it is almost too good to be true, which is perhaps why true stories are always better than invented ones. Dale Brown is in Germany visiting American military personnel as part of a goodwill tour. He wanders into the base gym. He sees a teenager, enormous, focused, moving through drills with a seriousness that most college players do not possess, and he stops walking. He finds Philip Harrison afterward and says, with the directness of a man who has been coaching basketball long enough to know exactly what he is looking at, "I want that young man to come play for me at LSU." Philip Harrison tells Coach Brown that his son is 15 years old. Dale Brown reportedly goes quiet for a moment. Then he says, "I'll wait." He is true to his word. The family moves again. Fort Stewart, Georgia this time, flat and hot and green in the way that coastal Georgia is green. Aggressively, completely, like the land itself is making a point. Shaquille enrolls at Ware County High School in Waycross, Georgia, and for one season he plays basketball there and begins to understand, in a new and serious way, what it means to be not just large, but genuinely, historically gifted. Then the family moves back to San Antonio, back to Texas, and this time, Shaquille O'Neal enrolls at Robert G. Cole High School, a different school from the middle school where he once sat on a hallway floor, but bearing the same name, as if the city is quietly, poetically completing a circle. At Cole High School, everything comes together. He has the size now, nearly 7 feet, still growing. He has the work ethic hammered into him by his father, and by 5 years of pre-dawn gym sessions in various time zones. He has something else too, something harder to quantify, but impossible to miss when you watch him play. A joy in the game that is almost violent in its intensity. He loves basketball the way some people love breathing. It is not separate from him, it is him. His senior season is something that the people who see it will describe for years afterward, in the tones usually reserved for weather events. He averages 32 points and 22 rebounds per game. He is named a McDonald's All-American. USA Today selects him as the High School Player of the Year in 1989. College programs from across the country come calling. Their coaches sitting in the Cole High Gymnasium in their sport coats, watching this 17-year-old boy do things to a basketball game that seem to belong to a different category of sport entirely. He chooses LSU. He chooses Dale Brown, the man who waited. At Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Shaquille O'Neal becomes a force that the college game is simply not built to contain. He is named SEC Player of the Year in his sophomore and junior seasons. He is a consensus All-American twice. He leads the Tigers with a combination of dominance and delight that makes people drive hours to sit in the Pete Maravich Assembly Center and watch him play in person. Because watching on television, they say, does not quite capture the full reality of him. He leaves after his junior year. The NBA is waiting, and both of them know it. The Orlando Magic select him first overall in the 1992 NBA Draft. He is 20 years old. He is 7 feet 1 inch tall. He weighs, at this point, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 pounds, and he moves with an agility that makes sports scientists genuinely uncertain how to categorize what they are observing. The NBA has had big men before. It has had powerful men. It has had fast men and skilled men, and men who changed the game by sheer force of personality. It has not had Shaquille O'Neal. The backboards go first. On the evening of February 7, 1993, in a game against the Phoenix Suns, Shaquille O'Neal rises for a dunk, and the backboard simply cannot accommodate what is being asked of it. It shatters. The game stops. Engineers are called. The NBA, quietly and without public fanfare, begins a league-wide project to reinforce every hoop structure in the country. A month later, it happens again, in New Jersey against the Nets. Another backboard. The league issues a statement. Sports writers run out of adjectives. He is 21 years old, and he is already rewriting the physical rules of the game. He signs with the Los Angeles Lakers in 1996 for $120 million, the largest contract in the history of professional basketball at that time. He moves to California. He meets a young, fierce, brilliant shooting guard named Kobe Bryant. He meets a coach named Phil Jackson, who has a gift for making extraordinary people play as one. What happens next is the kind of thing that sports exists to produce, and rarely does. The Lakers win the NBA championship. Shaq is named Finals MVP. They win again. Finals MVP. They win again. Finals MVP. 3 consecutive championships. A three-peat that puts them in the conversation with the greatest dynasties the sport has ever seen. And in the 2000 regular season, Shaquille O'Neal is named the NBA's most valuable player, the formal confirmation of what anyone watching already knew. He is, at this moment, the best basketball player on the planet. He carries all of it, the rings, the trophies, the records, the fame that has by now become something almost atmospheric, something that precedes him into every room, with a grin that could light a stadium. He is the rare athlete who seems genuinely, completely delighted by his own life. He releases rap albums. He makes movies. He is everywhere all at once, enormous and joyful and seemingly inexhaustible. And in 2006, now playing for the Miami Heat, alongside a young Dwayne Wade, he wins a 4th championship ring. A 4th. The hardware accumulates. The legacy calcifies into something permanent and historical. He retires in 2011, after 19 seasons. The Basketball Hall of Fame calls in 2016, and he answers, standing at the podium in Springfield, Massachusetts in a white suit, and he talks about his father, and he talks about his mother, and the arena is full of people who love him, and he is 54 inches of smile above a podium built for smaller men. He becomes a television analyst on TNT's Inside the NBA, trading jokes with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and the gracious Ernie Johnson, winning an Emmy, becoming somehow even more beloved in retirement than he was in his playing days, which did not seem possible, and yet is simply true. He tours the world as DJ Diesel, standing behind a booth at music festivals, playing electronic music to crowds of thousands who are slightly stunned, always, by the specific reality of him. He builds businesses, restaurants, real estate, technology investments. He becomes, quietly and without the fanfare that surrounded his playing career, extraordinarily good at the second act of his life. Through all of it, the championships and the cameras and the contracts and the crowds, he carries a small, stubborn thing that fame has not been able to touch. A memory, a hallway, a man with a bad knee and a flower-painted lunchbox who sat down on a cold floor one Thursday afternoon and asked a lonely boy what he liked. He has told the story in pieces over the years, never the full thing, never with the man's name, because he does not have the man's name, but the shape of it, the afternoon, the words, the particular quality of being truly seen by someone who had absolutely nothing to gain from seeing you, has stayed with him the way certain things stay, not in the memory exactly, but in the body, in the way he moves through the world. When nobody's watching, he has done the work. For 35 years, across 19 NBA seasons and 4 championship rings, and a Hall of Fame career, and a second life as a businessman and entertainer and television personality. He has done the work when nobody was watching. And now, at 50 years old, with his father 3 years in the ground and the particular weight of unfinished things pressing harder than it used to, he has started thinking about the people who came before the work, the ones who made the work possible. He has started thinking about Ernie. He just doesn't know yet if Ernie is still there to find. That thought, small, persistent, and slightly frightening in the way that important things often are, is the one he falls asleep with on a Tuesday night in the fall of 2022, in a house in Las Vegas that is large enough to contain the entire apartment his family lived in during their first year in San Antonio. He stares at the ceiling for a long time. Then he picks up his phone and calls his assistant. "Deborah," he says, "I need you to find someone for me." He stares at the ceiling for a long time. Then he picks up his phone and calls his assistant. "Deborah," he says, "I need you to find someone for me." Deborah Kimmons has worked for Shaquille O'Neal for 9 years, and in those 9 years, she has been asked to find many things. She has tracked down a specific model of vintage arcade game that Shaq remembered from a boardwalk in New Jersey when he was 9 years old. She has located a particular brand of hot sauce that was discontinued in 2004 and exists now only in the inventory of 3 specialty grocery stores in the American South. She has coordinated the logistics of getting a 7'1" man and his personal chef and his security team and his DJ equipment to a music festival in Ibiza, Spain, with 48 hours' notice. She is not easily rattled, but there is something in his voice on this particular Tuesday night that makes her reach for a notepad instead of her laptop. Something quieter than his usual requests. Something that does not sound like a task so much as it sounds like a need. "Tell me what you know," she says. What he knows is not much. A first name, Ernie. A school, Cole Middle School, San Antonio, Texas. A year, somewhere around 1985. A job title, Janitor. A face that Shaq can still see clearly when he closes his eyes, though he cannot say with any certainty whether what he is seeing is the actual man or the version of the man that memory has been quietly editing for 37 years. He tells Deborah all of this. Then he says, "He sat down on the floor with me when I was having the worst afternoon of my life. He didn't have to. He just did. And I never got to tell him what that meant." Deborah writes it all down. She does not say we'll find him with the breezy confidence of someone who doesn't understand how hard this might be. She has been doing this long enough to know that people disappear, that school records from 1985 are not always intact, that a black janitor at a public middle school in San Antonio 4 decades ago may have left behind very little that a search engine can locate. She says, "I'll start tomorrow morning. I'll be careful." Shaq says, "Take your time, but not too much of it." He hangs up. He stares at the ceiling some more. The reason for the urgency, the reason not too much of it lands with the particular weight that it does, is something Shaq does not say out loud on this phone call, but that sits in the room with him regardless. Ernie, if he is alive, is old. Very old. The math is simple and not comforting. If the man was 52 in 1985, he is 90 years old in 2022. 90. The number sits in Shaq's chest like a stone. He knows about the weight of unfinished conversations with old men. He knows it better than he would like to. His father, Philip Harrison, died on May 28, 2013. He was 63 years old. A heart attack, sudden and without warning, the way heart attacks often are, the body's most brutal form of punctuation. Shaq has spoken about this loss in interviews over the years, with the careful, measured pain of a man who is still, a decade later, figuring out what to do with it. He has said that his father was the most important person in the formation of who he became. He has said that there were things he meant to say and did not say in time. He has said, in one interview, that his producer had to gently remind him they were still filming, I just wish I'd told him more. I wish I'd said it when I had the chance. He is not going to make that mistake again if he can help it. Deborah Kimmons begins her search on a Wednesday morning with a yellow legal pad, 2 cups of coffee, and the particular focused energy of a woman who takes her work seriously enough to do it slowly. She starts with the San Antonio Independent School District. A phone call to the district's administrative office establishes that Cole Middle School still exists, still operates, and maintains historical employment records going back several decades, though accessing them requires either a formal records request or a conversation with someone who has the authority to approve one. She makes the formal request. She also makes a second call, informal, conversational, to the school's current office, and speaks with a receptionist who, when Deborah explains in very general terms that she is trying to locate a former longtime custodial employee from the 1980s, named Ernie, says warmly, "Oh, honey, you'd want to talk to people who were at the school back then. Have you tried the alumni network?" Deborah tries the alumni network. It takes 3 days and 4 dead ends before a name surfaces. A retired schoolteacher named Gloria Finch, 71 years old, who taught English at Cole Middle School from 1979 to 2008, and who, according to 2 separate former colleagues Deborah speaks with, attended every school board meeting in the San Antonio Independent School District for 15 years and knew everyone connected to every school in the district by their first name, their spouse's first name, and the names of their children. Deborah calls Gloria Finch on a Friday afternoon. Gloria picks up on the second ring with the alert, ready energy of a retired person who has kept themselves genuinely busy. Deborah introduces herself, explains she works for a client who is trying to locate a former janitor at Cole Middle School. First name Ernie. Worked there in the mid-1980s. Would have been in his early 50s at the time. There is a pause on the line. Then Gloria Finch says, with a certainty that makes Deborah's pen stop moving, "That's Ernest Boone. I went to school board meetings with that man for years. His wife Dora was one of the finest teachers this district ever had." Deborah's pen starts moving again, fast. "Is he?" she begins. "He's alive," Gloria says, and Deborah closes her eyes for one brief second. "He's 90 years old and stubborn as a fence post, and he still goes to that school twice a week to sit in the hallways. His daughter Cheryl is in Houston. I have her number somewhere. Hold on." She holds on. Within 72 hours, Deborah Kimmons has spoken with Cheryl Boone Watkins in Houston. Cheryl is 61, a retired nurse with her father's patient eyes and her mother's directness. And when Deborah carefully and professionally explains that her employer heard a podcast about reconnecting with people who shaped your life, and is trying to locate your father because he believes your father did something important for him a long time ago, Cheryl is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "Can I ask who your employer is?" Deborah tells her. The silence that follows is longer this time. "Shaquille O'Neal," Cheryl says, not as a question, just as the words themselves landing. "Yes, ma'am." Another pause. Then, softly, "My dad talked about that boy." Deborah's hand tightens on her pen. "He remembered him?" "Remembered him," Cheryl says. "He talked about him his whole life. Not constantly, but every now and then, when the basketball would be on television, Daddy would watch sometimes. Never was a huge basketball fan, but he'd watch. And sometimes he'd just say, quiet like, 'There's that boy.' Just like that, 'There's that boy.'" Deborah sits with this for a moment. Then she asks if it would be possible to arrange a meeting. "Something private," she explains. "No press, no cameras, just her employer and Mr. Boone, if Mr. Boone is willing and well enough for it." Cheryl says she will talk to her father. She calls back the next morning. "Daddy says yes," she tells Deborah. "But he wants to meet at the school, not at his house. At the school." A brief pause. "He says that's where it happened, so that's where it should happen." Deborah brings this back to Shaq. He is sitting in his home gym in Las Vegas when she calls, a basketball in his hands, turning it slowly the way he sometimes does when he is thinking. He listens to everything she tells him. The confirmation that Ernie is alive, the school board meetings, Gloria Finch, Cheryl, the conversations that Ernie has apparently been having with a television screen for decades. There's that boy, without Shaq ever knowing. He is quiet for a long time after Deborah finishes. Then he says he wants to meet at the school. Yes, of course he does, Shaq says softly, and there is something in his voice that Deborah, who has worked for him for 9 years and knows his register of emotions the way a musician knows a familiar song, has not quite heard before. Something stripped of performance. Something that belongs entirely to the 13-year-old boy in the East hallway and has been waiting, without hurry, for 37 years to be expressed. Book the flight, he says, and Deborah, don't tell him I'm coming. I want to find him the same way he found me. Just there. No warning, no announcement. Deborah writes it down. And one more thing, he says. I need 6 weeks before we go. I have some things to put together first. She doesn't ask what things. She has worked for him long enough to know that when Shaquille O'Neal says he has something to put together, what he means is that he is about to do something that will take everyone who witnesses it completely by surprise. She simply writes 6 weeks and underlines it twice. Outside the window of his Las Vegas home, the Nevada desert holds its particular afternoon light, flat and gold, and indifferent to the plans of men. Shaq sets the basketball down on the gym floor. He does not shoot. He just sits with the silence for a moment and thinks about an old man in a blue cardigan sitting in a school hallway with a cup of coffee, watching kids rush past between classes, waiting maybe. In the patient, unassuming way of someone who has always understood that the most important arrivals are the ones nobody schedules. He'll be there soon, Ernie. He's coming. Waiting, maybe. In the patient, unassuming way of someone who has always understood that the most important arrivals are the ones nobody schedules. He'll be there soon, Ernie. He's coming. The flight from Las Vegas to San Antonio takes 2 hours and 15 minutes. Shaq takes a window seat, which requires a particular negotiation with the physical reality of commercial aircraft that his travel team has long since learned to manage by booking 2 seats and hoping the armrest between them has the good sense to stay up. He does not watch a movie. He does not sleep. He looks out the window at the American Southwest passing below him, the desert giving way to scrubland, giving way to the first hints of Texas green. And he is mostly quiet in the way that people are quiet when they are carrying something they have been carrying for a very long time and can finally see the place where they might be able to set it down. Deborah sits 2 rows behind him with her laptop open, going over the final details. She has spent 6 weeks doing what Shaq asked her to do, and the thing that is now inside the envelope in the leather bag at her feet represents more work than almost anything else she has coordinated in 9 years of working for this man. She checks her email. She checks it again. Everything is confirmed. Everything is in place. She closes the laptop and looks out her own window. She thinks about Dora Boone, the woman she has never met, whose photograph she spent 3 weeks tracking through the San Antonio Independent School District's archive system, and 2 more weeks having professionally restored and framed. She thinks about what it means to find a photograph of someone's great love in a filing cabinet and carry it across the country to give to a 90-year-old man who has kept a flower-painted lunchbox on his kitchen counter every day for 24 years because he cannot quite bring himself to put it away. She thinks she might cry at the school. She is making peace with this possibility. The SUVs are waiting at San Antonio International Airport, exactly as arranged. 3 of them, black, unhurried. Shaq folds himself into the middle vehicle, and the small motorcade moves out into the San Antonio morning, which is warm in the particular way of a Texas October that has not yet accepted the reality of autumn. The air still soft, the sky a clean pale blue, the kind of morning that makes a city look like it is trying its very best. He has not been back here in a long time. Not like this. He has passed through San Antonio over the years. A game in the early 2000s against the Spurs at the AT&T Center. a commercial shoot somewhere downtown, a charity appearance he can no longer place precisely on the timeline. But passing through is different from returning. Passing through is something you do without fully arriving. What he is doing this morning is arriving. He watches the city through the tinted window. There is the particular texture of San Antonio that you do not get anywhere else. The missions, the river, the way Spanish and Texan and military and Mexican histories have been pressing against each other for so long that the city has developed its own specific cultural grain, like wood that has been shaped by pressure from multiple directions at once. He has always loved this city, in the uncomplicated way you love the places where something important first happened to you. The driver takes the highway north and then cuts through surface streets, and Shaq watches the neighborhoods change and not change. The corner stores, the churches, the schools that look exactly like every other school in the country, from the outside, and contain entire universes within. He sees a sign for Fort Sam Houston and asks the driver to slow down. He looks at it for a moment through the window. The gate, the flag, the particular geometry of a military installation, which is the same everywhere in the world, and yet carries, for him, the specific gravity of childhood. His father walked through gates like that one for 30 years. Philip Harrison, sergeant, soldier, the man who told his oversized, awkward, lonely son to stand up straight and mean it, who drove him to early morning workouts and watched from the bleachers without cheering because he wanted Shaquille to learn to perform for himself and not for the audience. The man who died too soon. The man Shaq still talks to sometimes, quietly, in the privacy of his own mind, because the alternative, accepting that the conversation is simply over, is something he has not fully managed yet. "I'm going to see him today, Dad," he says, silently, to the gate and the flag and the pale blue Texas sky. The man you never knew about, the one who sat with me that Thursday. He does not say anything else. He nods at the driver. They move on. The neighborhood around Cole Middle School is modest and familiar. Single-story houses with tidy yards, a convenience store on the corner, a barber shop with a striped pole that looks like it has been there since before anyone currently alive can remember. The school itself sits back from the street behind a chain-link fence and a parking lot. That is, on this Tuesday morning in October, occupied by the ordinary vehicles of teachers and staff who have no idea what is about to happen to their Tuesday. Shaq looks at the building. It is smaller than he remembered. This is always how it goes with the places of childhood. They shrink in the returning, because you have grown in the interval and the buildings have not. He remembers Cole Middle School as vast and bewildering, a maze of hallways and staircases and cafeteria lines that seem to stretch on forever. What he is looking at now is a single-story public school building in a working-class neighborhood in San Antonio, Texas. Well-maintained but ordinary. The kind of building that would be invisible to anyone who did not once need it desperately. He needed it desperately. He is quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, let's go." Dr. James Calloway has been the principal of Cole Middle School for 7 years. He is a thoughtful man in his mid-50s, the kind of administrator who knows every student by name within the first month of school, and who keeps his office door open in the literal sense because he believes that closed doors in schools communicate the wrong thing to children. He received the call from Deborah Kimmons 2 days ago. He has kept the secret with the careful precision of a man who understands exactly what is at stake in the keeping of it. He meets Shaq at the front door. They shake hands, or rather, they attempt to shake hands, which when one party is Shaquille O'Neal, becomes something closer to Shaq, gently engulfing Dr. Calloway's hand, and both of them smiling about it. Dr. Calloway is not a man who is easily made nervous, but he is, this morning, something adjacent to nervous. He is moved, which in some ways is harder to manage. "He's here," Dr. Calloway says quietly, meaning Ernie. "East hallway. He came in at 8:30 like always." Shaq nods. He takes a breath. And he doesn't know. He doesn't know anything, Dr. Calloway confirms. I told him it was a regular Tuesday. Ms. Patricia Elwood watches from behind the office window, with both hands wrapped around her coffee mug, and an expression on her face that she will spend the next several weeks attempting to describe to her sister in Austin without fully succeeding. Down the main corridor, behind a closed classroom door, 23 sixth graders are attempting to focus on pre-algebra and failing, because word has moved through the building the way word always moves through middle schools, at the speed of a whispered scream, unstoppable and total. At least 4 classroom teachers are also aware that something is happening, though they have been asked by Dr. Calloway to maintain normal instruction, and they are doing their level best. Normal instruction is not really happening. Shaq walks into Cole Middle School. The hallway stretches ahead of him. Lockers, linoleum, fluorescent lights buzzing their familiar institutional hum. A young school counselor named Tanya Reeves falls into step, a respectful distance behind him, there in case she is needed, and wise enough to stay quiet until she is. He walks slowly. He is in no hurry. He has been in a hurry to get here for 37 years, and now that he is here, something in him wants to move through it carefully, the way you move through something you have been waiting for long enough that the waiting has become part of what you are carrying. He passes the gym. He passes the cafeteria, which smells of breakfast trays and industrial cleaner, and somewhere underneath it all, improbably and unmistakably, the exact same smell it had in 1985. He does not know how that is possible. He accepts it anyway. He turns left at the end of the main corridor. The east hallway opens up ahead of him, long and quiet, the morning light coming through the windows at the far end, in long diagonal stripes across the linoleum floor. He stops. At the far end of the hallway, sitting in a chair that someone, Dr. Calloway probably, knowing what was coming, has placed against the wall, is an old man in a blue cardigan. He is holding a coffee cup in both hands. He is watching the empty hallway with the patient, settled attention of someone who has nowhere else to be and considers this a perfectly sufficient place to be at. He is 90 years old. He is smaller than Shaq remembered. He is exactly who Shaq remembered. Shaquille O'Neal stands at the entrance to the east hallway of Cole Middle School in San Antonio, Texas, on a Tuesday morning in October 2023, and for a moment, he does not move. He is 51 years old, and he is also 13 years old, and both of these things are equally, simultaneously true, and the distance between them, 37 years of becoming, feels in this moment both enormous and paper-thin. He begins to walk toward the old man. His footsteps are quiet on the linoleum. Ernie's head is down slightly, looking at his coffee. Then some shift in the light, or the weight of being looked at, or simply the instinct of a man who has spent decades being alert to the presence of people who need someone, makes him look up. He sees the enormous man in the gray hoodie coming toward him down the east hallway. His face moves through its sequence: surprise, confusion, and then, slowly, unmistakably, like something that was always going to happen, finally agreeing to happen: recognition. His lips part. He says only one word: boy. His lips part. He says only one word: boy. And Shaquille O'Neal, 4-time NBA champion, Hall of Famer, global icon, the man who shattered backboards and made the NBA reinforce its hoops, the man who sold out arenas on 6 continents and stood behind DJ booths at music festivals and smiled from billboards in Times Square and won an Emmy and built an empire from the raw material of his own extraordinary self, stops walking. He stands in the middle of the east hallway of Cole Middle School, and he looks at Ernest Boone, 90 years old, in his blue cardigan, with his coffee cup held in both hands, and something happens to his face that the cameras at TNT have never caught, and the photographers at championship parades have never captured, and the marketing teams behind the commercials have never been able to manufacture. He looks, for just a moment, exactly like a 13-year-old boy. Not because he has shrunk or softened or lost the enormous physical fact of himself. He is still 7 feet 1 inch of undeniable presence in a hallway built for children. But because something behind his eyes has traveled back across 37 years in the space of a single breath and arrived, fully and without defense, at a Thursday afternoon in September 1985. He sits down on the floor, not in a chair, not on a bench, on the floor. The cold linoleum floor of the East hallway, the same floor he sat on when he was 13 and lost and trying very hard not to cry. He sits down the same way he sat then, slowly, folding his enormous frame down to the ground. Backpack gone now, but the posture the same. The particular way his hands rest on his knees the same. The quality of his stillness the same. Dr. Calloway, standing at the entrance to the hallway, puts one hand over his mouth. Tanya Reeves, the school counselor, stops walking entirely. At the far end of the hallway, 2 6th graders who have been sent to return library books freeze against the wall with their mouths open, holding their books against their chests, bearing witness to something they cannot yet name, but will spend the rest of their lives knowing they saw. The hallway is very quiet. Shaq looks up at Ernie from the floor, the same angle he looked up from in 1985, the same quality of looking, upward toward an adult who has chosen to be present. And he says, "I never got to thank you, Mr. Ernie. I've been carrying that for 37 years." Ernest Boone looks down at the man on the floor. He looks at him for a long, unhurried moment, the way he has always looked at people, fully, without the need to fill the silence with something lesser than silence. Then he reaches out and places his right hand, calloused, arthritic at the knuckles, the hand of a man who has spent his life doing physical work without complaint, on top of Shaquille O'Neal's hand where it rests on his knee. "I know," Ernie says softly. "I've been watching you carry it." There is a specific kind of crying that is not about sadness. It is not the crying of grief or pain or loss, though it can contain all of those things. It is the crying that happens when something that has been unresolved for so long that you stopped noticing its weight is suddenly, without warning, resolved. When a door you forgot was closed opens. When a sentence that has been waiting for its final word for 37 years finally, quietly, gets one. Tanya Reeves is experiencing this kind of crying. The 2 6th graders at the end of the hallway are experiencing a version of this kind of crying, though they would not be able to explain it, and will simply describe it to their parents that evening as something really weird happened at school today, and I don't know, I just kind of cried a little. I don't know why. Ms. Patricia Elwood, back in the front office, cannot see any of this. But she has been crying steadily for the past 12 minutes on a feeling alone, which is a thing she will also attempt to explain to her sister in Austin with limited success. Dr. Calloway has excused himself to the nearest men's restroom to collect himself. He is a man who has run a middle school for 7 years, which means he has handled crises and celebrations and everything in between with professional steadiness. He is not, this morning, professionally steady. He is a human being watching something true, and it is getting to him, and he is allowing it to get to him, because some things should. In the East hallway, Shaq and Ernie are talking, not performing, not summarizing for an audience that isn't there, just talking, the way the original conversation happened, without agenda, without script, 2 people sitting together in a school hallway while the world continues at its normal pace around them and does not interrupt. Ernie asks about his mother. Shaq's face brightens immediately, the way it always does when someone asks about Lucille. "She is well," he says. "She is in her 70s, and she is formidable, and she still tells him when he needs a haircut." Ernie smiles and says, "That sounds about right." He says he always liked the sound of her, from what the boy described that Thursday afternoon. Shaq asks about Ernie's children. Ernie tells him about Cheryl in Houston and his son Marcus in Dallas, 63 and 59 respectively, both of them insisting with increasing frequency that he should move closer to one of them. both of them understanding with increasing resignation that he will not. "This is my place," Ernie says simply, meaning the school, meaning San Antonio, meaning the east hallway with the morning light on the linoleum. "Dora's buried here. My life is here. I'm not going to Houston to sit in a nice house and wait." "Wait for what?" Shaq asks. Ernie looks at him with the faint expression of a man who considers the answer obvious. "For whatever comes next," he says. "I'd rather meet it here." Shaq is quiet for a moment. Then he reaches into the inside pocket of his gray hoodie and he brings out an envelope. It is a standard white envelope, the kind you might find in any office supply store, and it is sealed, and it has no writing on the outside. He holds it for a second before offering it. Just holds it, feeling perhaps the full weight of what is inside it. 6 weeks of work, an idea that came to him at 2 in the morning in a Las Vegas hotel room when he couldn't sleep, and started writing on the back of a room service menu. A thing built not for a press release or a ceremony or an audience, but for one old man in a blue cardigan who once sat on a cold floor and asked a lonely boy what he liked. He holds the envelope out to Ernie. Ernie sets his coffee cup on the floor beside him. He takes the envelope with both hands. His fingers, steady for a 90-year-old man, but not entirely steady, because 90 years is 90 years, and this morning is this morning. Work the seal open carefully. He takes out the letter first. It is handwritten, 2 pages, front and back, in Shaq's handwriting, which is large and deliberate, the handwriting of a man who did not always love writing, and taught himself to mean it. Ernie reads it slowly. He reads it the way he has always read the important things in his life, without hurrying, giving each sentence the full space it asked for. We do not read the letter over his shoulder. Some things belong entirely to the people they are written for. But we see Ernie's face as he reads it. We see the way his expression moves, through something that looks like recognition, and then something that looks like surprise, and then something that has no clean name, but lives in the neighborhood of being understood completely by another person, which is one of the rarest and most overwhelming experiences available to a human being. He finishes the letter. He folds it along its original creases. He places it carefully back in the envelope. Then he reaches in again and takes out the legal documents. He is not a lawyer. He does not read legal documents quickly or easily. But Shaq has had Deborah prepare a plain language summary. 1 page, large font, clear sentences, that sits on top of the formal paperwork. And it is this that Ernie reads first. He reads it once. Then he reads it again. His hand begins to shake, not the ambient tremor of age, which has been there all morning and which Ernie has long since made his peace with. This is different. This is the shaking of a man receiving something so far outside the category of what he expected this Tuesday morning to contain that his body does not quite know how to process it. He looks up from the paper at Shaquille O'Neal. "You did this," he says. It is not quite a question. "We did this," Shaq says. "I just started it. You made it possible." Ernie looks back down at the paper. His jaw is tight, in the way that jaws get tight when a person is applying significant internal force to keep their composure and just barely managing it. He is reading about the Dora and Ernest Boone Fund for Human Presence in Schools. He is reading about hallway advocates. He is reading about 10 positions, already funded, already placed, across 10 San Antonio middle schools. He is reading his wife's name on a legal document, Dora Mae Boone, printed there permanently, attached to something that will continue and grow and do its work in the world long after both he and Shaq are gone. He is reading the word legacy applied to himself, which is a word he has never once in 90 years applied to himself, and which does not, even now, feel entirely like it fits, because Ernie Boone has never thought of what he did in hallways as legacy. He thought of it as Tuesday, as Thursday, as the thing you do when you see a child who needs someone to sit down. But here it is, his name on a document, his wife's name beside his, a thing that will keep sitting down with children long after his bad knee makes sitting impossible. He does not cry immediately. He is 90 years old, and he has a structural dignity that has been built by 9 decades of living. And it does not bend easily, this dignity. He has buried his wife. He has buried friends. He has lived through things that would have reorganized lesser people entirely. He does not come apart quickly or lightly. But then, Shaq reaches back into the leather bag that Deborah has carried in and set quietly beside him, and he takes out a frame. It is about 12 inches by 16 inches, wrapped in brown paper. He unwraps it slowly, carefully, and holds it out. Ernie takes it. It is a black and white photograph, old, the particular gray softness of photographs from the late 1970s, before digital sharpened everything and took away that quality of light that felt like memory itself. It shows a woman standing in front of a classroom. She is smiling. She is standing the way teachers stand when they are exactly where they are supposed to be, with an ease and a rightness that belongs to people who have found their purpose and simply live inside it. There are small desks behind her, and a chalkboard and a bulletin board decorated with construction paper letters. She is wearing a blue dress. She is 38 years old in this photograph, which means it was taken in 1978, which means Ernie was 45, and they had been married 17 years and had 21 more years ahead of them that neither of them knew about yet. She is Dora Mae Boone, and she is smiling directly at the camera with the full, unguarded smile of a woman who has nothing to hide and nothing to prove and everything to give, and she is so completely, recognizably herself in this image that the person looking at it does not need to have known her to understand exactly who she was. Ernie holds the photograph. The hallway is very quiet, and then Ernest Boone, 90 years old, a man who mopped floors for 31 years and sat with hundreds of children and never once thought of himself as significant, puts his thumb gently on the corner of the photograph where the frame meets the glass, and he cries. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. 2 tears, then a few more, running in the particular slow way that tears run on the faces of very old men, as if they too have learned patience from long experience. He does not say anything for a moment. Shaq does not say anything either. He does not fill the silence. He has learned, somewhere between 13 and 51, that some silences are not empty and do not need to be filled. He sits on the floor and lets Ernie have the moment entirely, the way Ernie once let a 13-year-old boy have a Thursday afternoon entirely. Finally, Ernie looks up from the photograph. He looks at Shaq. His eyes are wet, but his voice, when it comes, is steady. She would have loved this, he says. I know, Shaq says. That's why I found it. Ernie nods slowly. He looks back at the photograph of his wife. He looks at her for a long time. Then he says very quietly, to the photograph rather than to Shaq, or perhaps to both, since the line between them has blurred this morning into something more like one continuous address across time. Look, Dora. The boy came back. At the end of the east hallway, the 2 6th graders are still standing against the wall with their library books pressed to their chests. One of them, a girl named Amara Osei, 12 years old, who is having a very hard semester and who chose this particular moment to return library books because being in the hallway felt better than being in class, is crying openly and making no attempt to stop. The other one, a boy named Derek Paulson, is not crying. He is staring at the enormous man sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor next to the old man in the blue cardigan, and he is thinking something that he will write down in a journal that evening at his mother's suggestion, and that will become, years later, the opening paragraph of a college application essay that gets him into the University of Texas at Austin. He is thinking, I didn't know that great men sat on floors. The other one, a boy named Derek Paulson, is not crying. He is staring at the enormous man sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor next to the old man in the blue cardigan, and he is thinking something that he will write down in a journal that evening at his mother's suggestion, and that will become, years later, the opening paragraph of a college application essay that gets him into the University of Texas at Austin. He is thinking, "I didn't know that great men sat on floors." But before we can fully understand what is happening in this hallway, before the envelope and the photograph and the tears and the two sixth-graders against the wall can mean everything they are capable of meaning, we need to go back one more time. Not to 1985. Further, we need to know who Ernest Boone actually is. Because here is the truth about the people who change our lives quietly. We almost never know their story. We know what they did for us. We know the specific texture of the moment they entered it. But we do not know what shaped them into the kind of person who sits down on a cold floor next to a struggling child on a Thursday afternoon without being asked. We do not think to ask. And so they remain, in the edges of our most important memories, slightly incomplete, generous and present and real, but without the full weight of their own history behind them. Ernest Boone deserves his full weight. He was born on March 3, 1933, in Beaumont, Texas, the fourth of 7 children born to Roosevelt Boone and Ida Mae Boone, née Tatum. Roosevelt worked the docks. Ida Mae took in laundry and mending and raised 7 children in a house with 2 bedrooms and a faith in God so complete and so structural that it functioned less like a belief and more like a load-bearing wall. Beaumont in 1933 is not a gentle place for a black family. This is the Deep South at the height of Jim Crow, and the rules, formal and informal, legal and social, are designed with meticulous cruelty to communicate one thing above all others: that certain people do not fully count. Roosevelt Boone has lived inside this system his entire life, and he has developed, in response to it, a particular kind of dignity. Not the dignity of someone who has been treated with respect, but the harder and rarer dignity of someone who has decided to extend respect to himself, regardless of what the world decides. He passes this to his children the way other fathers pass down tools or land. It is the most valuable thing he owns. Ernest is a good student. He loves school, with an intensity that his teachers find almost startling. Not because it is unusual for a child to love learning, but because Ernest loves it with the focused, grateful urgency of someone who understands, even at 7 years old, that it is a door, and that doors can close. He reads everything he can find. He borrows books from the school library and returns them the next day, finished. He asks his teachers questions that take a moment to answer. But school costs money that the Boone family does not have, and by the time Ernest is 14, the arithmetic of survival has made itself clear. He leaves school, not because he wants to, not because learning has stopped interesting him, because Roosevelt's back is going bad from 20 years on the docks, and the family needs another income, and Ernest is the oldest boy, and the math is simple and brutal, and that is the end of it. He works the next 15 years in the way that young black men in the South, with no credentials and great intelligence, worked in the 1940s and 1950s. In kitchens, in fields during harvest seasons, in a furniture factory in Beaumont, where he spends 4 years learning to see what is wrong with a thing and fix it, which turns out to be a skill that transfers to almost everything. He moves to San Antonio in 1958. He is 25 years old. He comes because a cousin has a job contact, and the city feels, compared to Beaumont, like somewhere a person might have a little more room. He finds work quickly, a janitor position at a downtown office building, steady hours, decent pay by the standards of the time. He is good at it. He is good at almost everything he tries, because Roosevelt Boone's dignity and Ida Mae Boone's faith combine to produce a man who approaches every task as though it is worth doing correctly. In 1960, at a church social organized by the congregation of Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church on the east side of San Antonio, Ernest Boone meets Dora Mae Collins. She is 20 years old. She is studying to be a teacher at what is now Texas Southern University, commuting by bus on weekends to visit her aunt in San Antonio. She has a laugh that reorganizes the energy of whatever room it enters. and opinions about books that she delivers with a directness that some people find surprising, and that Ernest finds, from the first conversation, entirely wonderful. He asks her aunt's permission to write to her. The aunt says yes. He writes every week for 8 months. The letters are long and careful, full of the reading he has never stopped doing, and the observations he has been making about the city and the people in it. Dora writes back letters that are funny and sharp, and full of the particular electricity of a young woman who has found someone worth talking to. They marry in June 1961 in the sanctuary of Greater Mount Zion Baptist, with Roosevelt and Ida May in the front row, and Dora's mother crying since before the ceremony began. It is, by every account of the people who were there, a beautiful wedding. Dora graduates and begins teaching 3rd grade in the San Antonio Independent School District. Ernest continues his custodial work. Different buildings over the years, different employers, always the same quality of attention brought to bear on whatever needs doing. In 1974, a position opens at Cole Middle School. He applies. He is hired. He is 41 years old on his first day at Cole Middle School. And he already is, fully and without remainder, the man he is going to be. The man who notices. The man who fixes things. The man who hums Marvin Gaye while he mops and keeps a flower-painted lunchbox, and stops what he is doing when a child on the floor needs someone to stop. He has learned this from Dora. 30 years of dinner-table conversations about children, about what they carry and what they need, and what a single present adult can do for a child who believes nobody sees them, have made Ernest Boone into something that no job title captures and no employment record reflects. He is, in the truest sense, an educator. He just does it in the hallways. Dora teaches 3rd grade for 30 years in the San Antonio Independent School District, retiring in 1995. She is beloved in the way that the very best teachers are beloved. Not with the temporary, intense affection of a favorite, but with the deep, structural gratitude of people whose lives were quietly redirected by being in her classroom. Her former students send her cards on Teacher Appreciation Days for decades after she retires. Some of them bring their own children to meet her. She receives each of them at her kitchen table with coffee and the same complete, unhurried attention she gave them when they were 8 years old. She is diagnosed with breast cancer in 1997. She fights it for 2 years with the same directness she brought to everything. Practically, without self-pity, with a clear-eyed acknowledgement of what the odds were, and a decision not to spend whatever time remained being frightened of them. She dies in April 1999. She is 59 years old. Ernest Boone does not fully recover from this. He does not expect to. He continues working at Cole Middle School. He will work there until 2002, 31 years total. And he brings his lunch every day in the green metal lunchbox with the yellow flowers on the sides. And he hums her favorite songs in the hallways. And he keeps showing up for the children the way she taught him to. He retires in 2002. His children urge him to move to Houston or Dallas, closer to one of them. He stays in San Antonio. He tends the garden Dora planted behind the house. He goes to church. He reads. He watches television in the evenings, and sometimes, when a basketball game is on and the camera finds a particular enormous, grinning figure in the paint, or on the sidelines or behind a television desk in a studio, he says quietly to the room, "There's that boy, just that." He does not follow it with anything. He does not explain it to whoever is in the room, because whoever is in the room is usually Cheryl or Marcus visiting on a holiday, and he has never told them the full story, because the full story, to Ernie, is not a story. It is just something that happened on a Thursday afternoon. It is just a child who needed someone to sit down. In 2021, Dr. James Calloway calls him. A former colleague gave him Ernie's name. He explains that the school sometimes has kids who linger in hallways during passing periods, looking lost or upset, and that the counseling staff is stretched and the teachers are occupied, and that he wonders, with no obligation, no formal role, no expectation, whether Mr. Boone might consider coming in a couple of mornings a week, just to be present, just to be there. Ernie says yes before Dr. Calloway finishes the sentence. He starts the following Tuesday. He brings his coffee. He sits in the east hallway, which is where Dr. Calloway has learned from years of observation that the most lost children tend to collect. And he watches the kids rush past between classes, and he waits, patiently, without urgency, without a plan, for whoever needs someone to stop. He has been doing this for 2 years when Deborah Kimmons calls Cheryl in Houston and asks if her father remembers a boy named Shaquille. And Cheryl says, "Oh, honey, my dad talked about that boy his whole life." There is one more thing about Ernest Boone that the world does not know on the morning of October 17, 2023. A thing that Cheryl has told Deborah, and that Deborah has told Shaq, and that Shaq has been carrying alongside everything else in the leather bag and the white envelope since he boarded the plane in Las Vegas. In the bottom drawer of Ernest Boone's desk at home, a roll-top desk that belonged to Roosevelt Boone and that Ernest has kept and used for 60 years, there are 11 green composition notebooks. In these notebooks, written in Ernest's careful, unhurried hand, are the names of children, hundreds of them. A first name, a date, and one sentence, never more than one sentence, about what was said or what was shared, or what the child seemed to need that afternoon in the hallway. 31 years of Tuesdays and Thursdays, 31 years of sitting down. The notebooks begin in 1974, his first year at Cole Middle School. They end in 2002, his last. They are not a record kept for any audience. They are not a diary or a memoir or a document intended for anyone's eyes. They are simply the way Ernest Boone chose to honor the children he sat with, by writing them down, each one, so that they were not forgotten by at least one person in the world. Entry number, well, the number doesn't matter. What matters is the date and the words. September 26, 1985. Shaquille. Wants to be the greatest basketball player who ever lived. I told him to do what great men do when nobody's watching. I believe him. 7 words at the end. I believe him. Written on the same day. Written by a man who had no reason to believe in the boy beyond the particular quality of the boy's certainty, and who believed in him anyway, completely and without reservation, and wrote it down so it would be true somewhere permanent. Shaq does not know about the notebooks yet. He is about to find out. And when he does, when Ernie, holding the photograph of Dora and the legal documents bearing both their names, looks up and says quietly, "There's something I should probably tell you. What Shaquille O'Neal feels in the east hallway of Cole Middle School will be something that has no name in any language he knows. Something that lives just past the edge of what gratitude can reach. Something that feels, in the chest, like being believed in by someone who had no reason to believe in you. For the second time. Something that lives just past the edge of what gratitude can reach. Something that feels, in the chest, like being believed in by someone who had no reason to believe in you." For the second time, Ernie sets the photograph of Dora carefully on his knee. He looks at it for one more moment. The blue dress, the chalkboard, the smile that belonged entirely to her and that he has been missing for 24 years, with the steady, undiminished ache of a man who loved one person completely and knows he will not love that way again. Then he looks up at Shaq. "There's something I should probably tell you," he says. Shaq is still sitting on the floor. He has not moved from the floor since he sat down, and he is not planning to move until Ernie is ready for this conversation to be over, which at this rate may be never, and that is perfectly fine with him. "Tell me," he says. Ernie is quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone gathering courage. He has never needed to gather courage for the truth, but the quiet of someone deciding where to begin. He looks down the east hallway, at the light on the linoleum, at the 2 6th graders who are still standing against the wall and who show absolutely no sign of going anywhere. He begins with the notebooks. He tells it simply, the way he tells everything, without drama, without arrangement, as though he is describing something ordinary, which to him it has always been. He started writing the names down in 1974, he says, because Dora told him to. She said, "If you're going to sit with children, you should remember them properly." And remembering properly means writing it down. Because memory alone isn't enough, and these children deserve more than memory alone. So he wrote them down. All of them. Every child, every date, one sentence. 31 years. Shaq is very still. "You wrote them all down," he says. "Every one," Ernie says. "And you wrote me down." September 26, 1985. Ernie says, without hesitation, without having to think about it, because some entries do not require retrieval. They simply live at the surface, permanently. Shaquille wants to be the greatest basketball player who ever lived. I told him to do what great men do when nobody's watching. I believe him. The hallway absorbs this. Shaq looks at the old man. He opens his mouth. He closes it again. He tries a second time, and what comes out is not words exactly, but the sound of a person absorbing something too large for the usual containers. "You wrote 'I believe him,'" Shaq says finally. "I did. On the same day." "Same day," Ernie confirms. "I believed you then. I believe you now. Nothing in between changed that." Shaquille O'Neal puts both hands over his face. He stays that way for a moment. This enormous, famous, accomplished man, sitting cross-legged on a school hallway floor, with his hands over his face, doing the private work of receiving something he has needed for 37 years and did not know, until this exact moment, precisely how much he needed it. Then he takes his hands down. His eyes are wet. His smile, when it comes, is the realest thing in the building. "Mr. Ernie," he says, "I have to show you what's in that envelope. All of it. Because I need you to understand that what you're looking at is what 7 words did. Just those 7 words. I believe him. That's what built this." Ernie looks down at the documents in his lap. He has read the plain language summary once, and then again, and his hand has not entirely stopped shaking since. But he reads it a third time now, more slowly, while Shaq talks him through it. Not reading over his shoulder, but narrating the way a person narrates, when they want to make sure the other person understands not just what a thing is, but why it exists, and what it is made of. The Dora and Ernest Boone Fund for Human Presence in Schools. This is what Shaq built in 6 weeks on the back of a room service menu in a Las Vegas hotel room, and then refined with lawyers and school district administrators and education researchers who told him, unanimously, that the idea was not just good but necessary, and overdue, and the kind of thing that someone with resources and platform and the right story behind them could actually make permanent. The concept is simple. Deliberately, precisely simple. Because Ernie's whole life has been proof that simple things done consistently and with full attention are the most powerful things available to a human being. The fund pays for hallway advocates, not counselors. The schools already have counselors, stretched thin and overworked. Not security guards. The schools already have those too, serving a different and necessary function. Not teachers or aides or administrators. Hallway advocates. Adults, carefully selected, background checked, trained in basic youth mental health awareness and trauma-informed presence, whose entire job, for the hours they are in the school, is to be available. To stand or sit in the hallways during passing periods, and before school and after school. To notice the kids who are moving through those spaces the way Ernie noticed Shaquille in 1985. The slouch, the eyes that drop, the deliberate smallness of a child apologizing for existing. To sit down when sitting down is what is needed. The job description, which Shaq wrote himself at 2 in the morning, and which his legal team polished only slightly because it was already, in its raw form, exactly right, reads in its essential part. Your job is not to fix. Your job is not to report, unless safety requires it. Your job is to be present, and to notice, and to ask what a child likes, not what they have done wrong. Your job is to make a child feel that this hallway, right now, is a safe place to be. Your job is to be Ernie. 10 positions, funded immediately, for 3 years, with full benefits, across 10 San Antonio middle schools. The seed money, $1 million from Shaquille O'Neal personally, is enough to run the program for 3 years, while the fund builds its endowment through additional donations and a partnership with the San Antonio Independent School District that Dr. Calloway has been quietly negotiating for the past 4 weeks, ever since Deborah Kimmons called him and explained what was coming. The district has agreed to match the fund dollar for dollar if the pilot program demonstrates measurable impact, which Dr. Calloway, who has watched Ernie work in the East Hallway for 2 years, considers essentially guaranteed. There is a board of directors. Cheryl Boone Watkins will sit on it, representing her father's interests. Gloria Finch, the retired teacher who made the connection possible, has agreed to serve as a community advisor. A young education researcher from the University of Texas at San Antonio, named Dr. Patricia Okafor, who has spent her career studying the impact of non-teaching adults on student mental health outcomes, has agreed to lead the program's evaluation. The fund is already a legal entity. It already has a bank account. It already has its first 10 employees selected and awaiting final paperwork. It exists. Right now, today, while Ernie is reading about it for the first time on a Tuesday morning in October, it already exists and is already in motion. Ernie reads all of this a third time. He is quiet for a long while. "You named it for Dora," he says. "It was her idea," Shaq says. "You told me that. She told you to go find me. She said the hallways are where kids fall apart. She understood it before any of us put words to it. The fund is named for both of you, because it belongs to both of you." Ernie's jaw tightens again. He looks at the ceiling for a moment, the particular upward look of someone asking the ceiling to help them hold themselves together. "She would have had opinions about the job description," he says. Shaq laughs. It comes out full and genuine, the big laugh, the one that fills rooms. "That's why I kept it simple," he says. "She sounds like she would have made it better, and I would have had to rewrite the whole thing." "She absolutely would have," Ernie says. And then he laughs too. A quiet laugh, an old laugh, the laugh of a man who has been missing someone for 24 years and just felt, for a brief and extraordinary second, like they were in the room. It is, in its way, the best moment of the morning. Not the photograph or the documents or the fund or the $1 million. This, 2 people laughing about a woman they both, in their different ways, loved. A woman who painted flowers on a lunchbox and taught 3rd grade for 30 years and told her husband to go find a boy and change the course of everything. "There is one more thing," Shaq says. He reaches into the leather bag again. Deborah, who has been standing at the hallway entrance this entire time, perfectly still, watching with the careful attention of someone who has organized this morning down to the minute and is now witnessing it exceed every expectation she had for it, steps forward quietly and hands Shaq a second envelope. This one is smaller, thinner. It is not legal documents or letters. Shaq holds it for a moment, looking at it. Then he hands it to Ernie. Inside is a single index card. On the index card, in Deborah's neat handwriting, are 11 numbers. Just numbers, arranged in a column. Ernie looks at the card. He looks at the numbers. "Those are the notebooks," Shaq says quietly. 11 of them. Cheryl has them. She's been keeping them safe. Ernie nods slowly. He knew this. "What Deborah has started," Shaq continues, "with your permission, and only with your permission, is a project. We want to find them. The kids in the notebooks. As many as we can locate. We want to ask them if they remember." He pauses. "We want to ask them if they remember you." Ernie looks at him steadily. "Why?" he asks. Not defensively, genuinely. With the honest curiosity of a man who has truly never considered that the children might remember. To Ernie, The hallway conversations were his to carry, not theirs. Because, Shaq says, I think you have no idea what you did. And I think when you hear it from more than just me, when you hear it from 50 people, or 100 people who you sat with in a hallway somewhere and who never forgot, I think you're going to understand something about your own life that you don't understand yet. He leans forward slightly. You think you were just the janitor, Mr. Ernie. I need you to see what you actually were. The east hallway is very quiet. Ernie looks down at the index card with the 11 numbers on it. He runs his thumb across it slowly. Those children, he says, they didn't need me to be anything. They just needed someone to stop. I know, Shaq says. That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. Ernie is silent for a moment. Then he looks at Shaq with an expression that contains, in its complicated layers, something that might be the closest this particular man ever comes to being overwhelmed. All right, he says softly, you can look. And just like that, with 2 words from a 90-year-old man in a blue cardigan, holding a photograph of his late wife, and a card with 11 numbers on it, the second chapter of Ernest Boone's life begins. Not the chapter he lived, the chapter the world is about to discover. Outside in the hallway, Derek Paulson has finally remembered that he is supposed to be returning library books. He looks down at them in his arms as though he has forgotten what they are. Amara Osei is still crying, quietly, and has given up wiping her eyes. Derek looks at her. Do you know who that is? He whispers, meaning the man on the floor. Yes, Amara whispers back. Do you know who the old man is? Amara shakes her head. Derek thinks about this for a second. Then he says, with the instinctive and accurate wisdom of a 12-year-old who has just watched something true, I think he might be more important. Amara looks at the 2 men at the end of the hallway, the old one in the cardigan, the enormous one on the floor, the photograph between them, the papers, the morning light on everything. She thinks Derek Paulson might be right. She will think about this for the rest of her life. She thinks Derek Paulson might be right. She will think about this for the rest of her life. But the morning is not finished yet. Because there is a secret inside this Tuesday morning that nobody in this hallway knows except Shaquille O'Neal and Deborah Kimmons. And Deborah knows it because Cheryl Boone Watkins told her 3 weeks ago on a phone call that lasted 47 minutes. And Shaq knows it because Deborah brought it to him the same evening she heard it, sitting across from him in his Las Vegas home with her notepad open and her voice careful and steady, in the way voices get careful and steady when they are carrying something fragile. He has been holding it since then, waiting for the right moment. The right moment is now. It begins with what Cheryl told Deborah. And what Cheryl told Deborah begins, like most true things, not with a dramatic revelation, but with a small and ordinary detail that turns out, on examination, to be neither small nor ordinary at all. Deborah had asked, near the end of that 47-minute call, whether Ernie remembered the specific afternoon with Shaquille clearly, whether it stood out among the hundreds of hallway conversations he had over 31 years, or whether it had blurred into the general texture of all those Tuesdays and Thursdays. Cheryl had laughed softly at this. Not a dismissive laugh, a fond one, the laugh of a daughter who knows her father extremely well. Daddy didn't just remember it, she said. He planned it. Deborah's pen stopped moving. What do you mean he planned it? She asked. And Cheryl told her. Shaq has been sitting with this for 3 weeks. He has been sitting with it the way you sit with something that restructures the meaning of everything adjacent to it. Carefully, giving it room, letting it settle into its proper place in the architecture of the story, before saying it out loud. He says it out loud now. Mr. Ernie, he says, I need to tell you something. Something Cheryl told my assistant. Something I don't think you know that she told us. Ernie looks at him steadily. He has the expression of a man who is not easily surprised by information about himself, because he has always been the least mysterious person in any room he occupies. All right, he says. She told us that you didn't sit down with me by accident that Thursday. A pause. She told us you had been watching me for 2 weeks. Something moves across Ernie's face. Not guilt, not embarrassment. Something quieter and more complicated than either of those things. He looks down at the photograph of Dora in his lap. Then he looks back up at Shaq. He does not deny it. "She told you that," he says. "It is not quite a question." "She did," Shaq says. "She said you came home the very first day I arrived at Cole Middle School, and you told Dora about me. That there was a new boy. That he was the biggest kid you'd ever seen and the most lost." He pauses. "She said Dora told you to go find me." Ernie is quiet for a moment. The hallway holds its breath. "That sounds like her," he says finally. And then, Shaq continues, his voice very even, very careful, because he understands that he is handling something that belongs to this old man, and must be handled with the full respect that belongs to it. "Cheryl said you spent 2 weeks setting it up, that you made sure the east hallway was clean and quiet in the afternoons, because you had a feeling that's where I'd end up. That you arranged things." He stops. "Is that true?" Ernest Boone looks at Shaquille O'Neal for a long moment. Outside the windows of the east hallway, San Antonio goes about its Tuesday, with complete indifference to what is being said inside this building. A city bus passes. A dog barks somewhere nearby. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary morning, doing ordinary things. "I wouldn't call it arranging," Ernie says finally. "I would call it paying attention, and then making space. What's the difference? Arranging," Ernie says slowly, "is when you decide what's going to happen, and you make it happen. What I did was, I noticed a child who was going to end up somewhere alone one afternoon, because that's what lost children do. They find the quiet places. And I made sure the quiet place was ready for him. That's not arranging. That's just being ready." He pauses. "Dora called it active waiting," he says. "She said the best teaching she ever did wasn't in the planned lessons. It was in being ready for the moments that weren't planned. You can't make the moments happen, but you can make sure you're there when they do." Shaq absorbs this. "So for 2 weeks," he says, "you were ready." For 2 weeks, Ernie confirms, "I was ready." The simplicity of this, the extraordinary patience and intentionality of it, wrapped in the plainest possible language and delivered without a single note of self-congratulation, lands in the hallway with the quiet force of something genuinely true. Shaq is still for a long moment. Then he says, "Do you know what that means? That you didn't just happen to sit with me, that you chose to, that you saw me, and you made a decision, and you waited until the moment was right, and then you sat down. I saw a child who needed someone to stop," Ernie says simply. "The decision wasn't complicated." "It is to most people," Shaq says. "Most people keep walking." Ernie has no response to this, because he has never fully understood the alternative. Walking past a child who is visibly struggling has always seemed to him like a kind of active choice, and not a choice he is capable of making. He does not say this because it would sound like pride, and he is not a proud man. He simply nods and lets the silence carry what words would make clumsy. But there is more. This is not the end of what Cheryl told Deborah. Because after Deborah asked about the afternoon itself, she asked a follow-up question. A small one, almost an afterthought. The kind of question you ask at the end of a long conversation when you are reaching for anything you might have missed. She asked, "After Shaquille's family moved away, did your father ever try to find out what happened to him?" And Cheryl said, "No. Daddy never tried to find any of them. He said that wasn't his part." What did he mean by that? He used to say, Cheryl told her, that his job was the hallway. Just the hallway. What happened after the hallway? That belonged to the child. He said if you do your part right, the child carries it forward. You don't need to follow them to know it mattered. You just have to trust that it does. Deborah wrote this down word for word. She brought it to Shaq that evening and read it to him from her notepad. And Shaq sat with it for a very long time in a room that was otherwise completely silent. He trusted, Shaq said finally. For 37 years, he just trusted. Yes, Deborah said. Without knowing anything, she confirmed. Shaq had looked at the ceiling then. At the large, expensive ceiling of his large, expensive home, which felt in that moment like the least important thing in the room. "That's the bravest thing I've ever heard," he said quietly. He tells Ernie this now. In the east hallway, on the floor, he tells him what Cheryl said about the trusting. About the 37 years of simply believing, without evidence, that the work mattered. Ernie listens. He nods once, slowly. "Evidence would have been nice," he says. And there is the smallest thread of dry humor in it. The humor of a man who has waited a long time for something and is allowed to acknowledge that the waiting was long. Shaq laughs again. The big laugh, the real one. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he says. And he means it. The apology lands with the full weight of genuine regret. Not the performed regret of someone who has rehearsed it, but the real thing. "You came," Ernie says. "That's not late. That's just when it happened." Now Shaq tells him the last part. The part about the project. The notebooks. He has already introduced the idea. "With your permission, we want to find them." But now he tells Ernie what Deborah has already quietly begun. 3 weeks of careful, respectful searching through the first 2 notebooks. Names cross-referenced against school district records, against property records, against the kind of patient database work that Deborah has contracted to a private research firm with strict privacy protocols and clear ethical guidelines. In 3 weeks, working through the names in just the first 2 of 11 notebooks, they have found 41 people. 41 people who once sat in a hallway at Cole Middle School, on whatever afternoon their particular weight became too heavy to carry alone, and found a man with a mop who stopped and sat down with them. Shaq tells Ernie this number. Ernie's expression does something unexpected. He does not look moved, exactly. He looks calculating. The quiet arithmetic of a man working something out. "There are more than 400 names in those notebooks," he says. Shaq nods. "We know. You're going to look for all of them?" "We're going to try." Ernie is quiet. He looks down at the photograph of Dora. He looks at it for a long time, and whatever conversation he is having with it is private, and Shaq gives him all the room it requires. Then Ernie says, still looking at the photograph, "She would say, don't make it a spectacle. She would say those children's stories belong to them. You ask their permission before you share anything. That's already in the protocol," Shaq says. "Nothing gets shared without full consent. We're not building a campaign. We're building a record. So you can know. So I can know." Ernie repeats softly. "What you did," Shaq says. "All of it. The full size of it. Because I don't think you know, Mr. Ernie. I genuinely don't think you have any idea." Ernie sets the photograph of Dora very carefully on his knee again. He smooths the edge of the frame with his thumb. "Tell me about the 41, he says. Shaq does. He tells it the way Deborah compiled it for him. Not with names, because the names belong to the people, but with lives. With the shapes of what 41 people became after whatever afternoon they spent on a hallway floor with an old man who asked them what they liked. A nurse in Dallas who specialized in pediatric care because, she told the researcher who found her, she decided at age 11 that she wanted to be the kind of adult who showed up for children in hard moments. She did not remember why she decided this. She just remembered that someone once showed her it was possible. A high school principal in Austin, who has a policy, written into the school handbook, explained to every teacher at the start of every year that no child should ever be left alone in a hallway if a staff member can help it. He has never told anyone where this policy came from. He has simply enforced it for 11 years, with the quiet consistency of someone honoring a debt they have not found the right way to repay. A plumber in Corpus Christi, who coaches Little League on weekends, and who has a habit, noticed by every parent on his team, of sitting down on the dugout bench next to whichever kid is having the hardest day. Not to coach them, not to fix whatever is wrong, just to sit. His players' parents have commented on it for years. He has never explained it. He just does it, Because it is the thing that was done for him once, and it worked. And why would you keep a working thing to yourself? A woman in San Antonio. This one is the one that undoes Ernie. This one is the one that gets through the structural dignity entirely. A woman named Renee Tatum, who teaches 3rd grade in the San Antonio Independent School District. The same grade Dora taught. The same district. She sat in that hallway in the spring of 1991. She was 11 years old, and her parents were in the middle of a divorce, so painful and loud that she had stopped talking at school, because talking required energy, and she had none left. She had been quiet for 3 weeks. Her teacher was worried. The counselor had been notified. Nobody had quite reached her yet. Ernie sat down with her one afternoon. He asked her what she liked. She thought about it for a long time, the way children think when they are asked a real question rather than a polite one. Then she said, "Teaching." She did not know why she said it. She had never thought about teaching before that moment. The word arrived from somewhere she could not locate, and presented itself as true, and she said it out loud, and Ernie nodded with the full seriousness he brought to all such declarations. And she felt, for the first time in 3 weeks, like a person with a future. She has taught 3rd grade for 22 years. She found out about the Boone family connection 3 days ago, when Deborah's research team called her. She is, at this moment, in her classroom 4 miles away, teaching 21 8-year-olds how to sound out words, and she is doing it with the particular quality of attention that her students' parents always remark upon. The way she sees each child fully, the way she never seems to be going through motions, the way she makes every child in the room feel like the most important person in it. She learned this from a man she sat next to in a hallway when she was 11 years old and never saw again. She does not know that man is sitting 4 miles away, holding a photograph and hearing her name for the first time since the spring of 1991. When Shaq tells Ernie about Renee Tatum, the 3rd grade teacher, the same grade, the same district, Dora's grade, Dora's district, Ernest Boone finally, fully, and without any remaining resistance, comes apart. Not loudly. Ernest Boone does not do anything loudly. But the tears come properly now, more than 2, more than a few, and he does not try to stop them, because some things are larger than the effort of stopping them, and this is one of those things. Dora's grade. Dora's district. A child who sat in the hallway in 1991 because Ernie stopped, and who has been teaching Dora's grade in Dora's district for 22 years, without knowing the thread that connected her to the woman who told her husband to go find that child in the first place. The circle of it. The impossible, beautiful, entirely real circle of it. She teaches 3rd grade, Ernie says. His voice is not entirely steady. She does, Shaq says. And she wants to meet you. When you're ready. There's no rush. Ernie nods. He cannot speak for a moment. He looks at the photograph of Dora, the blue dress, the chalkboard, the smile. "Did you hear that?" he says quietly to the photograph. 3rd grade. She teaches 3rd grade. The hallway is perfectly still. And then, from the far end of the corridor, something unexpected happens. Something that nobody planned and nobody could have arranged, and that arrives, like all the most important things in Ernest Boone's experience, simply because the space was ready for it. Amara Osei, 12 years old, 7th grade, having a very hard semester in ways that her teachers have noticed and her counselor has begun to gently address, pushes off from the wall where she has been standing for the past 20 minutes, holding her library books. She walks down the east hallway, not toward the exit, not back toward her classroom, toward the 2 men at the end of the corridor, the enormous one on the floor and the old one in the chair, with the slightly unsteady walk of someone who is not entirely sure what they are doing, but is doing it anyway, because something has pulled them forward that is stronger than uncertainty. She stops in front of Ernie. He looks up at her. His eyes are still wet. He does not try to hide this. He simply looks at her with the full, unhurried attention he has given to every child who has ever stopped in front of him. She looks at him for a moment. Then she sits down on the floor. not next to Shaq, next to Ernie. Right there on the linoleum, cross-legged, library books in her lap, in the east hallway of Cole Middle School on a Tuesday morning in October, as though this is a perfectly ordinary thing to do, which to Ernie it entirely is. He doesn't ask her if she's okay. He asks her what she likes. She thinks about it. Really thinks. The long, genuine consideration of a child taking a real question seriously. Then she tells him, and Ernest Boone listens to her the way he has listened to every child in 31 years of hallways and 2 years of Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Completely, without hurry, as though whatever she is saying is the most important thing he will hear today. Because it is. Because it always is. Shaquille O'Neal watches this from the floor. This enormous, famous, 4-time champion man, sitting cross-legged on school linoleum, watching a 90-year-old janitor do the thing he has been doing since 1974, as though nobody is watching, and nothing has changed, and this Tuesday is just like every other Tuesday. He reaches into his pocket. He takes out his phone. He does not take a photograph. He does not open any application. He simply holds it for a moment, and then puts it back. Some things are not for the phone. Some things are just for being there. When nobody's watching, he thinks. And then he smiles. The full, real, unperformable smile of a man who has finally, completely, delivered the thing he came here to deliver. And he lets the hallway be what hallways have always been, in the hands of Ernest Boone, a place to land. And then he smiles. The full, real, unperformable smile of a man who has finally, completely, delivered the thing he came here to deliver. And he lets the hallway be what hallways have always been, in the hands of Ernest Boone. A place to land. The story gets out on a Thursday. Not because Shaq announces it. He does not post anything. He does not call his publicist in Los Angeles, or tip off an entertainment reporter, or arrange an exclusive with a magazine. He flies back to Las Vegas on Tuesday evening the same way he came, quietly, in a window seat, looking out at Texas disappearing below him in the dark. And he goes home, and he sleeps better than he has slept in a long time. It gets out because Dr. James Calloway mentions it at a San Antonio Independent School District Board meeting on Thursday evening. He mentions it the way people mention things that have moved them deeply, and that they have been carrying for 2 days, and that feel too important to keep entirely private. He does not give details. He does not name names beyond what is already public knowledge about Shaquille O'Neal. He simply says that something happened at Cole Middle School on Tuesday morning that reminded him of exactly why he got into education, and that he thought the board should know that the work they fund and support, and sometimes argue about in budget meetings, is the kind of work that matters in ways that cannot always be measured, and that sometimes take 37 years to fully reveal themselves. A board member named Carol Hutchins goes home that evening and tells her husband. Her husband tells his brother. His brother works at the San Antonio Express News. By Friday morning, a journalist named Sylvia Garza, 38 years old, a native San Antonian who has covered education and community stories for the paper for 11 years, and who has a gift for writing about ordinary people with the full respect their lives deserve, has made 3 phone calls and confirmed enough of the outline to know she has a story. She calls Deborah Kimmons. Deborah calls Shaq. Shaq is quiet for a moment on the phone. Then he says, "Is she going to do it right?" Deborah has read Sylvia Garza's work. She has spent Friday morning going through 11 years of her bylines. The school board pieces, the neighborhood profiles, the long-form story she wrote in 2019 about a retired Army chaplain in the East Side who had been quietly delivering groceries to elderly veterans for 20 years without telling anyone. That story won a Texas Press Association award. It was written with the particular care of someone who understands that the people most worth writing about are usually the ones most uncomfortable with being written about. "Yes," Deborah says, "I think she will." "Tell her she has to talk to Ernie first," Shaq says. "His story, his permission. If he says no, the story doesn't happen. Ernie says yes. He says yes the way he says yes to most things, without lengthy deliberation, because the question seems straightforward to him. Sylvia Garza wants to tell the truth about what happened. The truth seems worth telling. Yes. He sits with her at his kitchen table on a Saturday morning, with coffee and a plate of the butter cookies his daughter Cheryl sent from Houston, and he talks to her for 2 hours. He is, Sylvia will later tell her editor, the easiest interview she has ever conducted, not because he is polished or media-trained or strategic about what he reveals, but because he has absolutely nothing to hide and has never developed the habit of hiding things, and speaks about his own life with the same plain, unadorned honesty that he brings to everything else. The story runs the following Wednesday. The headline is simple. Sylvia fought for simple, and her editor agreed. A San Antonio janitor sat with a struggling kid in 1985. That kid was Shaquille O'Neal. It moves the way stories move in 2023. First locally, with a depth and feeling that belongs specifically to San Antonio, a city that recognizes its own and takes pride in the specific texture of what happened here. Then nationally, picked up by the Associated Press and redistributed to papers across the country. Then globally, translated and retranslated and passed between people in languages that Ernie Boone has never spoken, carrying the essential shape of the thing: old man, mop, lonely boy, 37 years, intact across every border it crosses. The comment sections, which are usually not worth reading, are on this occasion almost entirely worth reading. People are writing about their own Ernies, their own hallway moments. The teacher who stopped, the bus driver who noticed, the lunch lady who put an extra roll on the tray of a kid who looked hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food, the custodian, the crossing guard, the school secretary, the people who exist at the edges of official educational structures, and who do, daily and without recognition, the quiet human work that holds children together during the hours their families cannot reach them. The story has touched something that was already there, waiting to be touched. A general and widespread understanding, felt but rarely spoken, that the people who change our lives are often the ones nobody thought to thank. Inside the NBA airs on Thursday evenings on TNT, and the following Thursday, Shaq is in his seat at the desk, alongside Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson, and they are doing what they always do: talking basketball, arguing cheerfully, performing the easy chemistry of four men who have spent years together in front of cameras and have somewhere along the way become genuinely fond of each other. Ernie Johnson, who is the host and the steady moral center of the program, and who lost his own son Michael to muscular dystrophy in 2019, and has spoken about that loss with a grace that has made him beloved far beyond the basketball audience, brings it up near the end of the show. He does it gently. He simply says, "Shaq, I want to ask you about something that happened in San Antonio last week, if that's all right." The studio goes quiet in the particular way television studios go quiet when something real is about to happen inside them. Shaq nods. What follows is 4 minutes and 32 seconds of television. Not a segment, not a produced piece with graphics and music and archival footage. Just Shaq talking. About a Thursday afternoon in 1985. About a man with a bad knee who sat down on a cold floor. About 37 years of carrying 7 words. About a blue cardigan and a flower-painted lunchbox and a photograph of a woman in a blue dress who told her husband to go find a boy and changed everything. He does not cry on camera. He comes close. His voice does the thing that voices do when a person is applying all available internal resources to the task of remaining composed, and the effort itself is more moving than tears would have been. Charles Barkley, who is famously, constitutionally, almost aggressively resistant to sentimentality, who has made a career out of the loud, irreverent, magnificently honest persona that makes him simultaneously the most infuriating and most beloved analyst in sports television, says nothing for a long moment after Shaq finishes. Then he says, very quietly, in a voice that the studio audience has never heard from him before, "Man, we all got an Ernie somewhere." Kenny Smith nods. He does not trust his voice enough to use it. Ernie Johnson looks at the camera for a moment. Then he says, "And most of us never went back to say thank you. Shaq did. Remember that." The clip runs for 3 days as the most watched thing on the internet. Not a sporting event, not a celebrity moment. 4 men at a desk, talking about a janitor in San Antonio, and one of them saying, "We all got an Ernie somewhere." The Boone Fund receives its first outside donation on the day the Express news story runs. By the end of that week, it has received 412 donations from individuals in 31 states. By the end of the following week, the total has passed $2 million in additional contributions, doubling the fund's initial endowment in 14 days. NBA players begin contributing, not because anyone asked them to, because the story reached them the same way it reached everyone else, and they felt the same thing everyone else felt, and they had the resources to do something about it. By December 2023, contributions have arrived from 17 current and former NBA players, including a particularly large gift from a retired point guard named Isaiah Thomas, not the Hall of Famer, but the current player, 5 feet 9 inches tall, who has spoken publicly about being told his whole career that he was too small, and who wrote in his donation note, "For everyone who sat down with a kid who didn't fit." Corporate donors follow. A San Antonio-based technology company contributes enough to fund 3 additional hallway advocate positions. A national restaurant chain, not one connected to Shaq, one that simply read the story and made a decision, contributes a sponsorship that funds the program's training curriculum. By December 15, 2023, the Dora and Ernest Boone Fund for Human Presence in Schools has an endowment of $4.2 million and commitments from the San Antonio Independent School District to expand the Hallway Advocate program to 25 schools in the following academic year. Dr. Patricia Okafor at the University of Texas at San Antonio has begun the formal evaluation. Her preliminary observations, gathered from the first 8 weeks of the pilot program across the original 10 schools, are, in her careful academic language, extremely promising. Referrals to school counselors for acute distress have decreased in pilot schools. Attendance in the period immediately following the Advocate program's launch has measurably improved. Teacher reports of students arriving to class in states of visible emotional distress have declined. These are numbers. Behind each number is a child who found, in a hallway, someone who stopped. Ernie goes back to Cole Middle School the following Tuesday. This is not a surprise to anyone who knows him. Cheryl called on Sunday to suggest, with the gentle firmness of a daughter who has been trying to slow her father down for a decade, that perhaps he might want to take a week. Rest. Let everything settle. Ernie listened to this suggestion with the polite patience of a man who has already decided what he is going to do. "I'll rest on Wednesday," he said. Tuesday is a school day. He arrives at 6:30 in the morning, as always. He parks in the lot, not in the dried mustard truck, which is Cheryl's victory, replaced 2 years ago with a sensible gray sedan that Ernie finds perfectly adequate and refers to as the boat. And he walks into Cole Middle School with his coffee and his blue cardigan and the green metal lunchbox with the yellow flowers on the sides. The staff know him now, in a way they did not entirely know him 2 weeks ago. Not that they ignored him before. Dr. Calloway runs a school where the custodial staff and the volunteers are treated with the same basic human dignity as the teachers and the administrators. But there is a difference between knowing someone and knowing their story. And the staff of Cole Middle School now knows Ernie's story, and they look at him on this Tuesday morning with a quality of attention that is new. He accepts this with his characteristic unconcern. He nods at Ms. Elwood, who says good morning with a brightness that contains a week's worth of accumulated feeling. He nods at Tanya Reeves, the counselor, who smiles at him in a way that suggests she has been thinking about what she witnessed in this hallway last Tuesday and has not entirely finished thinking about it. He walks to the east hallway. He sits down in his chair. He holds his coffee in both hands. He waits. At 7:48, 12 minutes before the first bell, Amara Osei comes in through the front doors of Cole Middle School. She is early. She has not been early to school once this semester. Not because she doesn't care, but because mornings at her house are complicated in ways that a 12-year-old should not have to navigate alone, but that she has been navigating alone since September. She sees Ms. Elwood at the desk. Ms. Elwood smiles and says good morning. Amara says good morning back. Then she walks, without entirely deciding to, toward the east hallway. She turns the corner. He is there. Of course he is there. He is always there. That is the whole point of Ernest Boone. He is always there. She sits down on the floor next to his chair. She does not have library books this time. She has her backpack and her coffee-colored winter coat that is slightly too big for her because it was bought last year for a girl who is now 3 inches shorter than the girl wearing it today. Ernie looks at her. "You came back," he says, not with surprise. With the quiet acknowledgement of someone who hoped for something and is glad it arrived. "You're here," she says, as though this is the explanation. "Which it is." He nods. He sips his coffee. "You were going to tell me something," he says. "Last Tuesday. You started to tell me, and then the bell rang." She looks at him. She had forgotten that he would remember. She is 12 years old and she is still learning that some adults actually listen, that some adults carry what you give them rather than setting it down the moment you walk away. "I was going to tell you about my mom," she says. "I know," Ernie says. "Take your time." And she does. She takes all the time she needs, there on the floor of the east hallway, with the morning light coming through the windows in long diagonal stripes, and the school filling up around them with the sound of arriving children and opening lockers, and the particular music of a Tuesday morning beginning. She tells him about her mother. She tells him about the apartment. She tells him about the nights that are too loud and the mornings that are too quiet, and the feeling she has been carrying since September of being, in some fundamental way, too much for the space she occupies and not enough for what the space requires. She tells him, finally, what she told him last Tuesday when he asked what she liked. She likes science. She likes the way science asks questions without being embarrassed about not knowing the answers yet. She likes that in science, not knowing something is the beginning rather than the end. Ernie listens to all of this. He listens the way he always listens, completely, without agenda, as though the only thing happening in the world right now is this girl's voice in this hallway. Then he says, "A person who likes questions that don't have easy answers is going to be just fine in this world. You know that?" Amara thinks about this. "How do you know?" she asks. Not argumentatively. Genuinely. The honest question of a child who needs the answer to be real and not just kind. Ernie considers it seriously. "Because the world needs people who aren't afraid of hard questions," he says. "Most people run from them. You just told me you like them. That's not nothing. That's actually everything." The first bell rings. Amara gets up. She picks up her backpack. She stands for a moment, looking at the old man in the blue cardigan with his coffee cup and his flower-painted lunchbox, and his patient, complete, unhurried attention. "Will you be here Thursday?" she asks. "I'll be here Thursday," he says. She nods once, as though this settles something important. Then she walks toward her classroom with the slightly different quality of movement that belongs to a person who has set something down. Not solved it, not fixed it, just set it down for a moment in a safe place, and felt the relief of lighter hands. Ernie watches her go. He sips his coffee. He is 90 years old and his knee aches, and the world has spent the last 2 weeks paying more attention to him than it has in his entire previous life combined. And none of that, not the fund, not the television clip, not the $4.2 million, not the photograph of Dora now sitting in a new frame on his kitchen counter where he can see it from the table where he drinks his morning coffee. None of it changes what this Tuesday morning is. It is a school day. There are children in the hallways. He is here. That is enough. That has always been enough. Down at the far end of the east hallway, the morning light moves slowly across the linoleum floor, the same way it moved across this same floor in 1985. The same way it will move across it long after everyone in this building today is gone. The light does not care about funds or donations or television clips or Hall of Fame plaques. It simply comes through the windows every morning and lands where it lands and illuminates whatever happens to be there. This morning, what happens to be there is an old man doing what he has always done, waiting for whoever needs someone to stop. Down at the far end of the east hallway, the morning light moves slowly across the linoleum floor, the same way it moved across this same floor in 1985, the same way it will move across it long after everyone in this building today is gone. The light does not care about funds or donations or television clips or Hall of Fame plaques. It simply comes through the windows every morning and lands where it lands and illuminates whatever happens to be there. This morning, what happens to be there is an old man doing what he has always done, waiting for whoever needs someone to stop. In Houston, on a Saturday morning in November 2023, Cheryl Boone Watkins sits at her kitchen table with 11 green composition notebooks spread open in front of her. She has looked at these notebooks before, many times. After Dora died, after Ernie retired, after the Tuesday evenings when she would visit and find her father watching basketball on television and saying quietly to the screen, "There's that boy," she would sometimes take the box from the closet and sit with the notebooks the way you sit with something that belongs to someone you love and that you do not fully understand but cannot bring yourself to put away. She understands them better now. Deborah Kimmons's research team has been working through them for 6 weeks, with the careful, unhurried precision that Ernie's approval required, and that Shaq personally reinforced in a phone call to the team's director on the day the project began. "These are people's lives," he said. "Not data. People. You treat every name like it's someone you love." They have treated every name like it is someone they love. The count, as of this Saturday morning in November, stands at 114 names located out of the 431 total entries across 11 notebooks spanning 31 years. 114 people who once sat in a hallway with Ernest Boone and who have now, in some form, been found. Of the 114, 89 have been successfully contacted. Of the 89 contacted, 83 have responded. Of the 83 who responded, every single one remembered. Not vaguely. Not in the blurred, uncertain way that childhood memories blur with time. Clearly, specifically. With the particular sharpness that belongs to memories formed in moments of genuine need. The kind of memories that do not erode, because they were not formed by the ordinary processes of a normal day, but by the extraordinary process of being seen, fully and without agenda, by another human being at the exact moment when being seen was the most important thing in the world. Cheryl reads through the response summaries that Deborah's team has compiled. Each one is a paragraph. Each paragraph is a life. A man in El Paso who became a social worker and has spent 20 years working with homeless teenagers, who told the researcher who found him, "Someone sat with me once when I had nowhere to go. I never forgot what that felt like. I decided I wanted to be that for other people." A woman in Fort Worth who is a pediatric nurse and who keeps, on the windowsill above her workstation, a small framed card that reads, "Ask them what they like." She has never told her colleagues where this came from. She simply follows it every day. A man in Laredo who teaches high school history and who begins every school year by telling his incoming freshmen, "My door is open. My hallway is safe. You can always stop here." He does not explain why he says this. He has said it for 16 years. A woman named Sandra Okonkwo, in San Antonio itself, 4 miles from Cole Middle School as it happens, who runs a nonprofit that provides after-school programs for middle school students in underserved neighborhoods. She sat in that hallway in 1988, when she was 12 years old, and newly arrived from Nigeria, and could not yet navigate the language well enough to ask for help. Ernie did not need her to explain. He just sat down and asked, in slow, clear, patient English, what she liked. She liked numbers. She was extraordinary at mathematics, in a way that crossed the language barrier entirely. She went on to study mathematics at Trinity University in San Antonio on a full scholarship. She ran a financial services firm for 15 years. Then she closed it and opened the nonprofit because, she told the researcher, she kept thinking about a hallway and a man who noticed her before she had the words to make herself noticeable. Her nonprofit serves, this year, 340 children. Cheryl reads this and puts the notebook down for a moment and looks out her kitchen window at the Houston morning. 340 children. From one afternoon in 1988. From one man stopping and sitting down. She picks the notebook back up. There is a name near the middle of the 7th notebook that has taken the research team the longest to locate. A first name only. Marcus, which is also the name of Ernie's son, which is also one of the most common names in Texas, which makes the search considerably harder. The date is October 14, 1993. The entry reads, Marcus, 13. Hasn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. Sat with him. He told me he wants to build things. I believe him. It takes the team 4 weeks and a specific cross-reference against school enrollment records from the San Antonio Independent School District in the fall of 1993 to find him. His full name is Marcus Deshaun Webb. He is 43 years old. He lives in Austin, Texas. He is an architect. He has designed, over a 17-year career, 14 public buildings in Central Texas. Libraries, community centers, a youth recreation facility in East Austin that won a state architecture award in 2019. He is known, among his colleagues and clients, for a specific and consistent design philosophy. Every building he designs must have at least one space that functions as what he calls a gathering corridor. A hallway wide enough and warm enough that people will stop in it. A hallway designed, in his own words from a 2021 interview in a Texas architecture journal, to feel like a place rather than a passage. He has never publicly explained this philosophy. He explains it now, to the researcher who finds him, in a phone call that lasts 22 minutes and that he ends by asking, very quietly, is he still alive? The man with the mop? He is told yes. Marcus Deshaun Webb, 43 years old, architect, builder of hallways designed for stopping, is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "Can I meet him?" Cheryl calls Shaq on a Sunday afternoon in late November with the number 114 found. 83 responses. 83 people who remembered. Shaq listens to the whole thing. He asks her to read him some of the paragraphs. She reads. He listens. He does not say much. He is not a man who needs to fill every silence, and this particular silence is too full already. When she finishes, he says, "Does he know yet?" "Your dad. I'm going to see him next weekend," Cheryl says. "I'll tell him then." "Tell him about the architect," Shaq says. "Tell him about the man who builds gathering corridors. I think that one will get him." Cheryl agrees that that one will get him. She pauses. Then she says something she has been meaning to say for several weeks, since the phone calls began, and the newspapers ran their stories, and the television clips circulated, and the fund grew, and the whole extraordinary machinery of consequence that her father set in motion in 31 years of quiet hallway work began to become visible. "Mr. O'Neill," she says, "my father doesn't fully understand what you've done. He's trying to, but it's outside his category. He doesn't think in terms of legacies and funds and named things. He just thinks in terms of Tuesday and Thursday." "I know," Shaq says. "I just want you to know that I understand it," she says, "even if he can't entirely. What you did, coming back, finding him, doing all of this, I want you to know that someone in our family understands the full size of it, and I'm grateful." In a way I don't have words for yet. Shaq is quiet for a moment. Miss Cheryl, he says, your father sat down on a cold floor with a 13-year-old boy who had nothing. He didn't do it for gratitude. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because your mother told him to go find that boy, and because he was the kind of man who, when his wife said go find a boy, went and found him. And then he wrote it down so the boy wouldn't be forgotten. He pauses. I came back because I had to, because not coming back would have been a waste of what he gave me. Everything else, the fund, the advocates, all of it, that's just me trying to do what great men do. He stops. When nobody's watching, he says, Cheryl Boone Watkins, 61 years old, retired nurse, daughter of Ernest and Dora Boone, holds the phone against her ear in her Houston kitchen and cries in the uncomplicated, full-bodied way of someone who has been holding a lot of feeling for a long time and has just been given permission to set it down. On a Tuesday morning in December 2023, Ernie arrives at Cole Middle School at 6:30, as always. He parks the gray sedan. He walks in through the front doors. He nods at Ms. Elwood, who has by now developed a habit of watching him arrive the way people watch sunrises, with the particular appreciation of someone who has learned not to take reliable, beautiful things for granted. He walks to the east hallway. He sits in his chair. He holds his coffee. He is 90 years old, and the December morning is cold enough that Cheryl has made him add a second layer under the blue cardigan, which he has done without argument, because some battles with daughters are not worth having. His knee aches more in the cold. He has made his peace with this. He has made his peace with most things. The school fills up around him. The sounds arrive in their familiar sequence. Buses in the parking lot, feet on linoleum, lockers opening and closing, voices layering over voices until the building reaches its full morning pitch, and then the bell rings, and it all funnels into classrooms, and the hallway goes quiet again. He sits in the quiet. He thinks about Dora. He thinks about her every morning. This is simply the condition of being Ernest Boone, that every morning begins with Dora. And this morning he thinks about her photograph on the kitchen counter, the one Shaq found in the archive and had restored, the blue dress and the chalkboard and the smile that belonged entirely to her. He has looked at it every morning since Shaq gave it to him, and each morning it is slightly different. The way photographs of people you love are always slightly different, depending on who you are when you look at them. This morning, it looked like a beginning. He is not sure what it is the beginning of. He is 90 years old, and beginnings are not typically the dominant feature of a 90-year-old's landscape. But something has shifted since October. Something structural, the way Shaq described his own shift in 1985. Small and internal, and impossible to point to directly, but undeniable in its effect on how the building stands. He knows about the notebooks now. Cheryl told him. She came to San Antonio the first weekend of December, and they sat at his kitchen table with coffee. The same table, the same kitchen, the same green metal lunchbox on the counter that he has carried every working day for longer than most of the teachers in this school have been alive. And she told him the numbers. 114 found, 83 remembered. He listened to the whole thing. He asked her to read some of the paragraphs. She read. He listened. When she got to the architect, the gathering corridors, the hallways designed for stopping, the man who wants to meet him, Ernie set his coffee cup down on the table and was very quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Dora would have loved that one. I know, Cheryl said. A man who builds hallways, Ernie said, more to himself than to Cheryl. Lord. He picked his coffee back up. He looked at the photograph of Dora on the counter. He shook his head slowly, not with disbelief, but with the particular wonder of a man confronting the distance between what he thought he was doing and what he was actually doing. I was just cleaning floors, he said. No, Daddy, Cheryl said gently. You were building something. In the east hallway, the December light is thinner than October light. It comes through the windows at a lower angle and covers less of the floor and has the slightly apologetic quality of winter sun that knows it is not doing its best work, but is showing up anyway. Ernie thinks this is something children could learn from. Showing up, even when you are not at your best. Doing what you came to do, even when the conditions are not ideal. The light comes through every morning, regardless. It lands where it lands. At 7:52, 8 minutes before the first bell, footsteps come down the east hallway. Not the quick, slightly chaotic footsteps of a child running late. Measured ones. Adult ones, but young adult. The walk of someone in their 20s, maybe. Purposeful but not urgent. A young woman turns the corner. She is 23 years old, and her name is Jasmine Okafor, daughter of Dr. Patricia Okafor, the University of Texas at San Antonio researcher leading the Boone Fund's evaluation. She is one of the fund's first 10 hallway advocates, placed here at Cole Middle School 3 weeks ago. She has a master's degree in social work and a warmth that her supervisor described in her hiring evaluation as immediately and genuinely disarming. She is wearing a blue lanyard with her name badge and a gray jacket, and the slightly alert, slightly nervous expression of someone who is 23 days into a new job and is still finding their footing. She stops when she sees Ernie. He looks at her. "You're early," he says. "I wanted to ask you something," she says. Before the kids come in. "Sit down," he says. She sits. Not on the floor. There is a second chair now, placed there by Dr. Calloway quietly after October, because it seemed like the right thing to have. And she looks at him with the direct, earnest attention of someone who takes their work seriously enough to feel its weight. "I don't always know what to say," she tells him. "When a kid stops, when they sit down. I know the training, I know the frameworks. But in the actual moment, sometimes I don't know what to say." Ernie looks at her steadily. "Then don't say anything," he says. "Just be there. The saying comes later, if it comes at all. The being there is the whole thing." She absorbs this. "But what if they don't talk? Then you sit in the quiet together," he says. Quiet with someone is different from quiet alone. Children know the difference. They always know. She nods slowly. She looks at the hallway, the lockers, the linoleum, the windows with the winter light coming through. "Is it always enough?" she asks. "Just being here?" Ernie considers this with the seriousness it deserves. He does not give her the easy answer, because he has never in his life given anyone the easy answer when the true answer was available. Not always, he says. Some children need more than a hallway. Some need doctors, counselors, teachers, families. The hallway is not the whole answer. He pauses. But it is always the right beginning. Because a child who feels seen in a hallway is a child who might be willing to accept more help later. You are not the solution. You are the door. Jasmine Okafor sits with this. "The door," she says. "That is all I ever was," Ernie says simply. "A door that was open." The first bell rings. The hallway fills. Jasmine stands. She takes her position, a few feet down from Ernie's chair, her own territory of the hallway, her own patch of morning light to stand in. She straightens her lanyard. She looks at the kids coming through, the way Ernie taught her, not scanning, not assessing, just looking, open, present, available. A boy walks past who is moving slightly slower than the rest of the crowd. He has the particular quality of slowness that is not laziness but weight. Jasmine notices it the way Ernie taught her to notice. Not by staring, but by allowing her attention to rest gently in his direction. He glances up at her. She meets his eyes. She does not smile with the performed brightness of an adult trying to seem approachable. She simply looks at him the way Ernie looks at everyone, fully, without agenda. He slows down slightly more. She says quietly, "Hey, how's your morning going?" He shrugs, but he slows down. "I like your backpack," she says, because she does. It has a small embroidered patch of a rocket ship on the front pocket. He looks down at it. He almost smiles. "Thanks," he says. "I like space." "Yeah?" she says. "What do you like about it?" He stops walking. He looks at her with the slight wariness of a child checking whether the question is real. It is real. She has learned from Ernie that the question is always real. He starts talking about space, about black holes specifically, about which he has extensive and passionate opinions that he has not shared with anyone at school because nobody has asked. He talks for 90 seconds, a long time, for a kid in a hallway between classes. And she listens without interrupting, and when the second bell rings and he realizes he is going to be late, he says, in a voice that contains something that was not in it 45 seconds ago, "Sorry, I should go." "Don't apologize," she says. "Go learn something. Come back and tell me about it." He grins, quickly, briefly, like a light switched on and then off, and then he is gone, running down the hallway toward his class. Jasmine stands in the morning light. She looks at Ernie. He is watching her with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has just watched someone do a thing correctly and does not need to announce it. She understands something in this moment that the training materials did not fully convey, and that no framework she has studied has ever quite captured. She understands it the way you understand things that can only be understood by doing them, by being in the hallway, by asking the real question, by watching a kid's face change when someone actually listens. She understands what Ernest Boone has been doing in this hallway for 31 years. She understands what Shaquille O'Neal has been trying to build in his honor. She understands why the light comes through the windows every morning, regardless of the season, and lands where it lands, and illuminates whatever happens to be there. "Okay," she says softly to herself, to the hallway, to nobody in particular. "Okay, I've got it." In Las Vegas, on the same Tuesday morning, Shaquille O'Neal wakes up at 5:45. He does not have to be anywhere until noon. There is no practice, no game, no television taping, no business meeting, no DJ set, no commercial shoot. The morning is his entirely. He gets up anyway. He goes to his home gym. He picks up a basketball and he turns it in his hands the way he always does when he is thinking, feeling the seams, the familiar weight of it. 51 years old, and the basketball still feels like the right thing to hold when the world requires steadiness. He thinks about Ernie in the east hallway with his coffee. He thinks about Jasmine in her blue lanyard finding her footing. He thinks about Amara Osei, and Derek Paulson, and Marcus Deshaun Webb, and Renee Tatum, teaching 3rd grade, and Sandra Okonkwo, and her 340 children, and the nurse in Dallas, and the principal in Austin, and the plumber in Corpus Christi, who sits on dugout benches with kids who are having a hard day. He thinks about 431 names in 11 green notebooks. He thinks about the ones they have found, and the ones they are still looking for. The long river of consequence that has been flowing outward from one man's 31 years of showing up and stopping and sitting down. He thinks about his father, about Philip Harrison, who stood at gates like the one at Fort Sam Houston and demanded excellence, and meant it as the deepest possible love, who drove his enormous, awkward son to pre-dawn workouts in the cold, who said, "I'm not your friend, I'm your father," and who died before Shaq could say everything he meant to say. He has been saying it anyway. In the fund, in the advocates, in the flight to San Antonio and the floor of the East Hallway, in the ongoing, effortful, imperfect work of a man trying to honor the people who made him possible. Before the window closes entirely, he puts the basketball down. He does not shoot. He has not shot a single basket this morning. He has simply held the ball and thought about what it means to do the work when nobody is watching. And now he sets it down on the gym floor, and he goes to his desk, and he opens his laptop. He has an email to write. It is to Marcus Deshaun Webb, the architect in Austin, who builds gathering corridors. Shaq's team has been in contact with him through formal channels, but this email is not from his team. This email is from Shaq directly, written by himself at 5:53 in the morning in the quiet of his Las Vegas home. It is not long. It does not need to be. It says, "Mr. Webb, I heard about the corridors. I want to talk to you about something. I think you might be exactly the right person to design what I have in mind. Call me when you can. Shaq. What he has in mind is something he has been thinking about since November. Since Cheryl first told him about the architect. Since the idea arrived. The way ideas sometimes arrive. Whole and quiet and completely inevitable. A building. Not an arena. Not a sports complex. Not anything with his name on it. A building in San Antonio, near Cole Middle School, designed from the ground up around a single architectural principle. That the hallways are the most important spaces in any building where children spend their days, and that they should be built accordingly. Wide, warm, full of light. Designed to make people slow down rather than rush through. Designed, as Marcus Webb put it in that Architecture Journal interview, to feel like a place rather than a passage. A community center for the neighborhood around Cole Middle School. After-school programs, youth counseling, space for the Boone Fund's training programs. A reading room named for Dora Mae Boone. And at the center of the building, running its full length, an east-west corridor wide enough to sit in comfortably, lit by skylights, lined with soft benches, and designated, in the building's official architectural description, as a gathering hallway. A hallway designed for stopping. It does not exist yet. It is still just an email at 5:53 in the morning. But the best things usually start that way. Quietly. In the early hours. When nobody is watching. Between a man and an idea he is not yet sure he can build, but is absolutely certain he needs to try. He sends the email. He closes the laptop. He sits in the quiet of his Las Vegas home for a moment, in the particular stillness of early morning, before the day has properly started, and he thinks about a janitor in San Antonio who arrived at a school at 6:30 every morning for 31 years, and cleaned floors and fixed things, and sat with children, and wrote their names down in green notebooks, and never once thought of any of it as extraordinary. He thinks, I know, Mr. Ernie, I know. That's exactly what it was. The 11 green notebooks are now in a climate-controlled archive at the University of Texas at San Antonio, donated by Cheryl Boone Watkins, with her father's full blessing, and cataloged by Dr. Patricia Okafor's research team, with the care normally reserved for primary historical documents, which is what they are. The search continues, slowly, carefully, with full respect for the privacy of every name. As of the writing of this story, 167 names have been located, 151 have been contacted, 144 have responded, 144 people who remember. The research team has stopped being surprised by this number. They were surprised at 60. They were surprised at 90. By 144, they have arrived at something beyond surprise. A kind of settled, clear-eyed understanding that what they are documenting is not an anomaly but a principle. That human presence, offered consistently and without agenda over a long enough period of time, produces effects that compound in ways that no model fully predicted, and that only become visible across decades. That one man stopping, repeated 431 times across 31 years, is not a small thing. That it is, in fact, one of the largest things any of them have ever measured. On the last Tuesday before Christmas, Ernie Boone sits in the east hallway of Cole Middle School, and drinks his coffee, and watches the kids move through their morning with the patient, complete attention he has brought to this hallway for 2 years as a volunteer and 31 years before that as the man who cleaned it. Jasmine Okafor is down the hallway in her spot, her lanyard straight, her eyes open, learning. Amara Osei stops on her way to first period and sits on the floor for 4 minutes and tells Ernie about a science project she has started, about the formation of stars. She is animated in a way she was not in October. Not fixed, not resolved, but moving, which is a different and in some ways better thing. Derek Paulson walks past and nods at Ernie with the slightly self-conscious nod of a 12-year-old boy who wants to acknowledge something important without making it weird. Ernie nods back with the gravity of a man who understands exactly what is being communicated and honors it fully. A boy Ernie doesn't recognize yet. Small, 7th grade, new to the school this semester, moving through the hallway with the careful, slightly minimized quality of a child who is trying not to take up too much space, slows down near Ernie's chair. He doesn't stop. Not quite. But he slows. Ernie looks at him, not staring, just looking. The way you look at someone when you want them to know you see them, without making them feel cornered by being seen. The boy glances at him. Ernie says, "Hey." Just that. Just the one word. The boy says, "Hey." Keeps walking. That is all. No conversation. No revelation. No moment that anyone watching would identify as significant. But tomorrow the boy will slow down again. And the day after. And sometime next week or the week after, on a morning that is slightly harder than the others, he will stop. And Ernie will be there. That is the whole system. That is the entire mechanism of everything that has followed from that Thursday afternoon in September 1985. Not strategy, not brilliance, not resources or platform or fame, or any of the things that the world typically credits with changing things. Just a person. Just a hallway. Just the reliable, daily, uncelebrated decision to show up and be present, and trust that presence, offered honestly and without agenda, is enough to start something. Enough to start everything. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was asked in a January 2024 interview, the first interview he gave after the story of Ernie Boone became public, what he most wanted people to take from it. He was quiet for a moment, long enough that the interviewer started to ask a follow-up question. Then he said, "There is someone in your life right now who did what Ernie did for me. They probably don't know they did it. They probably don't think of it as a big deal. They probably just thought they were being decent. But you know who they are. You've always known." He looked at the camera. "Go find them," he said. "Don't wait 37 years. Go find them while you still can. Because the thing I almost didn't get to do, the thing that almost didn't happen, is the thing I will be most grateful for the rest of my life." He paused once more. You don't need to be Shaq to do this. You don't need a fund or $1 million or a television show. You just need to go back. You just need to say the thing you've been carrying. That's it. That's the whole lesson. Ernie taught me that. On a floor. When nobody was watching. The east hallway of Cole Middle School is quiet now. The last bell has rung. The kids have gone home. The teachers are in their classrooms finishing the day's paperwork. Miss Elwood has turned off the office lights. Dr. Calloway has walked the building one last time, the way good principals walk their buildings. Checking, attending, making sure the place is safe and ready for whatever tomorrow brings. The hallway is empty, except for the light. It comes through the windows at the low, golden angle of a late December afternoon, spreading across the linoleum in long, warm stripes, reaching all the way to the far wall, where a chair sits empty now, waiting for Tuesday. The chair is ordinary. Metal frame, padded seat, the kind of chair that exists in schools and community centers and waiting rooms across the country, without anyone thinking twice about it. Nothing about it announces its significance. Nothing marks it as the place where an old man sits twice a week and changes the direction of lives so quietly that the lives don't always know they've been changed until years later, when they are sitting in their own homes in cities all over Texas and the country, and they hear a story on a podcast, or read a newspaper article, or see a television clip of a famous man talking about a hallway, and they feel something move in their chest, and they understand. The chair is empty now, but on Tuesday morning at 6:30, a gray sedan will pull into the parking lot. A man will get out carefully, favoring his bad left knee. He will walk through the front doors. He will nod at Ms. Elwood. He will walk to the east hallway. He will sit down. He will hold his coffee in both hands. He will wait, not for anything in particular, for whoever needs someone to stop, for the boy who misses his bus, for the girl whose mornings are too hard, For the kid who moves through the hallway slightly smaller than his actual size, apologizing with his whole body for existing. For the one who has something extraordinary inside them that nobody has thought to ask about yet. For all of them, Ernest Boone will be there. He always has been. And now, because a 13-year-old boy grew into a man who came back, and because that man understood that the greatest thing he could do with everything he had become was to say thank you, and here is what you made possible, and let me make sure other children find what I found in this hallway. The work will continue long after Ernie's bad knee will no longer carry him here. In 10 schools, then 25, then however many come after that. In the building that Marcus Deshawn Webb will design, with its wide corridor full of skylights and its reading room named for Dora Mae Boone. In Jasmine Okafor, who is learning. In Amara Osei, who likes science and is beginning to believe that this might be allowed. In Derek Paulson, who now knows that great men sit on floors. In 167 people found and counting, carrying in their bodies the permanent, undiminishing record of what it felt like to be seen. In 431 names in 11 green notebooks, the full map of one man's 31 years of showing up, still being searched, still being found, still surprising everyone who finds them with the same answer, yes, I remember him. Of course I remember him. He sat with me in the hallway. He asked me what I liked. Nobody had asked me that before. I never forgot. The most important thing in the world is family and love. I never dreamed about being a millionaire. I dreamed about being a great man. And that is the story of Ernest Boone and Shaquille O'Neal. 2 people, 1 hallway. 37 years of proof that the smallest act of kindness, sitting down, asking what someone likes, believing in them before they believe in themselves, can change everything. Before you go, I want to ask you one simple question. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city, your country, or even just a feeling in the comments below. Because this community comes from every corner of the world, and every single one of you carries an Ernie story somewhere inside you. Someone who sat with you, someone who stopped, someone who asked the real question when nobody else did. Tell us about them. And if this story moved you, if it made you think of someone you need to call, someone you need to go back and find, someone you have been meaning to thank for a very long time, hit that like button right now. Not for the algorithm, for Ernie, for every quiet, overlooked, extraordinary person who ever showed up for someone without asking for anything in return. And if you believe that kindness deserves to be seen, that the people who change lives from hallways and mop buckets and folding chairs deserve their flowers, subscribe to this channel and help us spread that message to someone who needs to hear it today. One click from you could be someone else's hallway moment. Do not underestimate that. Now go watch the video appearing on your screen right now, because the next story is just as powerful, just as real, and just as much proof that the world is full of Ernies if you know how to look. We will see you there.